Who will quickly tell me what are design patterns and what were the types of design patterns that we saw? Can you quickly tell me in the chat, like what are design patterns? Or I can ask any one of you to unmute yourself. Alok Singh, Alok Singh or Hemant, Ibrahim. Structural, behavioral, creational, very good. Who will tell me what are design patterns? Any one of you unmute yourself and quickly tell me what are design patterns? Design patterns are solutions to existing problems. Very good, Chaitanya. Common solutions to common problems, standard solutions to common problems. Yes, templates. Yep. Okay. So as we saw, there were three types of design patterns. Okay. But before jumping into the design pattern that we'll be looking at, let's start from an example. Let's try to understand the problem that is going to happen, and then let's move ahead. Okay, we are starting now. Now, please don't talk about random stuff in the chat. If needed, you can chit chat on Discord. But please, let's have full focus today. Three important topics we have to do today. Cool. Okay. Let's take a case. Let's take a scenario. We are working in a bank. Okay, so you are also working in a bank. I am also working in a bank. Very simple use case. Okay, I work on processing some say monetary part of it or processing some further requests or things like that. Versus you work on say opening accounts. Okay, so now you are the one who's responsible for opening accounts. So you are from another team. I am from another team. Now, since you are the one who is opening accounts, let me just write it down. You are the one who will be opening accounts, and I will be the one who will be processing the requests, payments, and all of that. Okay. Obviously, you are going to open the accounts and then you will give me the access that, okay, you can process it now. Right. So now people come to me that I want to process such and such payment in such an account. But now you are responsible for opening. Now, in opening, there are different types of accounts. One is obviously, say, business account. One is, say, savings account, right? So there are different kinds of accounts. Now, if I ask you, how are you going to structure this code? I know you are going to tell me a very simple solution that you're going to have an account. And from this, you will have like a business account and savings account, right? Makes sense till here? It makes sense to everyone? Yes. This much is simple, no? So you are opening the accounts. Now, in this, you will have, say, open account uh, or account opener will be account getter. Okay, account getter is, say, one class. Inside this, I am like, okay, uh, I need to process a new account. Can you open a business account and give it to me? Okay, so what is happening is basically I will take some input that customers come to me and say that I want to process such and such request in say business account or say in savings account. People are still joining, guys. It is very distracting when you guys join so late. Okay, I'm going to get started and I'm not going to repeat. So from tomorrow, please join on time. Okay, otherwise it is going to get distracting for you also, for me also. Please join on time. Okay. Cool. So now what happens is that when users come to me, they say that I want to process this request. So I know that, okay, whether this is business or this is savings. So I go to you and I say, open the business account and give it to me. So what might happen is that on your side, you will have like a if else condition that if I have sent you a business type, you are going to open business account and give me. Okay. Else if it is say savings account, you're going to open and give it to me. Now, what is going to happen is that with this opening, with this accounts like saving account, business account, the way you open it is going to be a huge logic, right? So in this class, you're also doing other things, like maybe you are checking the permissions or you are doing KYC. Okay, you are checking, does the person have enough funds to open this kind of, what is the balance, something you are checking. Okay, you're putting a lot of checks also over here. Now what happens is that suppose there is a new type of account that comes checking. So now I tell you that open a checking account and do it. So now what you'll have to do is you'll have to put a check in this if else condition that if I am requesting for check, you'll have to make this change, right? So now whenever a new type comes, you'll have to come and make the change again and again. And whatever other things are happening in your class, like permission, KYC, funds, balance, whatever is happening, you will have to, like, all of that will also be impacted. Does it make sense? Does it make sense? The problem that I'm talking about, that whenever I am asking, Naveen is saying, sorry, shouldn't an account be opened before any payment processing? Yes, that's what I'm saying, that you are the one who's responsible for opening and people are coming to me for processing. So I am asking you to open the bank account. Let's say that this is how it works for now. Okay. So now the point is that when you're opening the account, whenever there's a new type of account that something, uh, something new is introduced, or someone decides that we are not going to open business account anymore, you're going to make a change in the class and everything is going to be impacted. Your KYC, your funds, your balance, your permission, everything is going to be impacted, right? So that is the problem now. Now, how can we make this better? How can we make this extensible, maintainable, that when some changes happen, we don't have to change the code so much. So for that, what we do is, because we're creating accounts and the creational logic is sort of complex, but a bit different for, say, checking account or business account, what you're going to do is you're going to create a separate class, which is going to be uh, doing what? It is just going to be creating the accounts. Okay. And rest of the things like KYC, funds, balance, check permissions, maybe all of that is going to happen separately. Maybe before creating these accounts, you are checking all of this and then only you're creating, right? Obviously, you're going to perform the checks first, you're going to do the validation first, and only then you're going to create the accounts. So you're going to do this. And then there's another class. So basically, this if else condition, what you're doing, you're taking it and you're putting it inside this. I know it must be confusing right now. Let's try to understand once more that what is the problem and how are we trying to solve it. Okay. Let's take another example. So you guys wanted to take example of parking lot. Okay. So let's take an example of parking spot. Okay. So there are different kinds of parking spots. Suppose there is one regular one handicap one, and then there's another one that comes later, electric. For now, let's say there's only these two and this is not there. Okay. So now what is happening is whatever your parking spot ka code is, inside this, you're doing a lot of things along with creating the spots. You're also say painting the spots. You are suppose rearranging or reassigning the spots or whatever. You're doing a lot of things inside this. Now what happens is that every time a new type of spot comes, you will have to make change in this entire thing. So your painting, your reassigning, all of this will have to be tested again. And we are violating a lot of solid principles, correct? We have to talk about solid. Let's talk about solid one by one. How is solid violated? Let's look at this. SRP. So basically this parking spot should have had one responsibility, single responsibility, right? But we are creating, we are painting, we are reassigning, whatever different things we had to do, we are doing under one class. Similarly, over here also, we were checking permissions, KYC, funds, balance, we were doing all of that. So we were violating SRP. How are we violating OCP? We are violating OCP because tomorrow, if new type of spot comes or if this goes, I will have to make a change in this. And I will end up testing all of this again. Correct? So I'm violating OCP. Similarly, over here also I'm violating OCP. Correct? If I talk about LSP, LSP is fine. I don't think we are violating that over here. Interface segregation, here we have not divided into small interfaces. So okay, not so much important over here. Dependency inversion is not happening over here. Why? Because see, our parking spot is basically sort of high level module and we are depending on the low level module. So how is it being created? How is the painting happening or how is the reassignment happening? So if you think about it, we are violating multiple solid principles. So this is not correct way to go about it. So what are design patterns? Design patterns are basically, so a common problem that occurs. What is the common problem that occurs over here that I'm talking about? Creation of objects. Okay. So here we are going to say that creation of objects, just take it out, abstract it out, and keep it somewhere else. That is what we are doing in factory design pattern. Okay, just listen to me carefully. If you have not understood, it's fine. I'm going to explain it again and again. So when are we going to do factory design pattern? Why are we going to do factory design pattern? Let's look at it one by one. See, whenever we have to deal with object creation, we can think of factory design pattern. Now we talked that there are three types of design patterns, right? Creational, structural, behavioral. Now here, obviously, I'm talking about creation. So we are talking about creational design pattern. Everyone, because this is sort of a complex topic and there are like three variations of the same design pattern. So I want all of you to pause, not ask any doubts for say next 1 hour and just concentrate on what I'm talking about. And then after that, you can ask me questions. Does it make sense? But otherwise the flow will get distorted. Okay, so just look at what I'm talking about and then we'll pick up questions. Thank you. So whenever we are creating similar sort of objects, why am I saying similar sort of objects? I'm saying similar sort of objects because see, here we are creating regular parking spots, handicap parking spots, electric parking spots, or say checking account, business account, or current account, savings account, whatever. Okay, so those are different kinds of accounts, but they're sort of related. They have common behavior in them, right? So when the objects have sort of common behavior, I will explain this more, don't worry. And when we have to create these objects based on some factor that, okay, is the user requesting for a savings account or for a current account? Or what sort of spot are we creating? It is sort of a similar object, but some behavior is going to be different during the creation. So what are we trying to do? We are going to abstract the creation process. And we are going to encapsulate it into another class which is called factory. Okay, now what if you think about factory, right? Simple factory. What does factory do? It creates something. So here also this class that we'll be creating, it will be creating objects. As simple as that. Okay. Let us take few more examples so that you can understand that, okay, these are the cases where we might have to do factory design pattern. And then we will understand it, how this is making our life easier, how are we following solid principles and all of that. But let's understand the different use cases where we could be applying solid principles, the factory design pattern. So I said object creation and creating similar type of objects, correct? So let's take example, like for example, I take Amazon. In Amazon, say I am creating a product. Right now, there can be different types of products. They can be electronics, they can be books, they can be clothing. These are different types of products, correct? Now, when I have to create a product, all I have to do is say that, okay, it is electronics, it is book, it is clothing. Now, based on the type, the creation process might change a bit. Like, okay, for books, this is the creation process. For clothing, this is the creation process. For electronics, this is the creation process. But like, because it is a similar product, in the end, it is a product only. I can use factory design pattern. Similarly, say hotel room. If we are talking about Book My Show. In hotel room, there can be, say, a single room, a double room, a suite. Can you tell me, are you able to understand that what will be the use cases where we might use factory design pattern? Can I get yes or no? Like it is fine. Are you able to get a slight idea of when we might want to use factory design pattern? Yes. Similarly, say in Swiggy, Zomato, if we have an order, now order can be of different types. It can be say dine-in, it can be takeout, it can be delivery, correct? Now, when you create this order, it will be a slight difference is going to be there. For delivery, you might have to create something about the delivery. For takeout, you might have to do that. Okay, the status is going to be different. In dining, you might have to, like while creating, you might have to block, right? So the creation process is slightly different, but in the end, you are creating an order, right? So you can inherit. So basically, there is a relation of inheritance over here. This is a dine-in order. This is a takeout order. This is a delivery order. But during the creation, we want to abstract this information out and let another class do the creation process. Okay. Similarly, over here, there's electronics product, books product, clothing product. All of them in the end are products. Correct. Let's take more example. someone had asked to take an example of elevator. So if we take elevator, there are different kinds of elevators, right? So there is one passenger elevator and there is say one freight elevator, correct? When you're creating the elevator, you could use factory design pattern because creating. Yes. Can you give an example where we can't use design, though it's for creation only? I did not understand the question. Okay, I will talk about how interface will fit in over here. Don't worry. Okay, now suppose I am creating video ka objects for my say Netflix or something. Now video can be separate. Say it is a movie, it is a TV show, or it is a documentary. Now, when I create it, I might want to add different tags to, say, to movie, to TV show, to doc. I might have to add like different tags, maybe make some changes to it, or the way it is shown, maybe the UI or something I might have to change, right? So maybe I have to make something, some particular configuration changes accordingly. So when I create the video, when I add the video itself, I will make those changes. Now, movie is a video, TV shows are videos, documentaries are videos. But in the end, there's a bit of change when you're creating them or when you're adding them. Similarly, another common system is library management system. Right now, they can be different systems, say for fiction and non-fiction. While creating them, you want to suppose add them to different tags or you want to do something, so you can do that. Similarly, if you're creating a car for rent, okay, so car for rent, it could be an SUV, it could be a luxury car, or it could be a normal car, economy car, or sedan, or whatever you want to add different kinds of cars. Does it make sense? Do you get the examples that where all can we use it? We will look at the code and look at the details, but do you get an idea of where we might be using it? Yes? Okay. Now let's understand that what problem is this solving again and how are we solving it? How are we following the solid principles? Okay.
Kirti, hello.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but can you give an example where we can't use factory design, although we are like creating objects only, like it's for creation only, but we can't use factory design there. Is there an example?
They will be firstly, there will be more creational design patterns that we'll be taking up and we will compare. So with every design pattern, we'll compare that why are we picking this design pattern over other design patterns. Okay. So when we do structural also, we'll compare that why this structure versus another structure. So then it will get clearer. But for now, we can take a lot of examples. Like in this itself, you can argue with me, like yesterday only I was talking about, like in electronics, book and clothing, although they are different uh, products, they are types of products, but is the creation going to be different or not? If the creation is not different, then we can just have one attribute and just do the same thing, right? But we have to understand that if the creation is different, if it is a bit complex, when we are doing for electronics or big books or clothing, only then we should be using factory design pattern, correct? Like in dine-in takeout delivery, you will probably have to make changes. Like for example, fiction and non-fiction library management system. You can argue that management system is going to be completely same. Just there is going to be an attribute that fiction and non-fiction. So when you're creating it, how much is it different, right? We have to talk about that. Does it make sense? Yes or no? Yep.
So does that mean like if there's a lot of difference, then we won't be using factory design pattern? Like if it's more complex, right?
No. If the creation process is different, we are going to be using factory design pattern. If it is exactly same, then we don't need to use, right? Then we are just overusing it. We are just trying to force fit it. Only if it is complex, but they are both of same type. Like suppose you can think of it like the parent class is same, but the creation is bit complex. In that case, we'll be using factory design pattern.
So does that mean, Kirti, that the logic for the creation of the objects would be different, or just creating them, or they might be having a different methods or a different functionality together?
Let's look at the code. I guess it will get clearer then. Yes. Can we look at the code? Okay, let's look at it like this. Suppose I am the user and I need a car type for rent. Let's take this example itself. Okay, so for now, what I'm doing is that if car type is equal to if it is equal to say SUV, I'm going to create SUV. If it is equal to luxury, then I am going to create luxury car. If it is equal to economy, I am going to create economy car. Okay. Now see, while creating SUV, create luxury car or create economy car, if the creation process is completely same, why would I want to create different functions, right? But if it is different, if the process is a bit different, then I would want that there are different functions for this, correct? Like for example, if my order type is say dine in, then I am going to create dine in type, dine in order, right? Else if it is takeout, I'm going to create takeout order. Else I am going to create delivery order. But only if the creation is different. Here, like this is a very good example because here the creation is going to be different. While creating the dine-in order, I will have to say assign a table, block a table. In takeout, I will have to probably give a status that, okay, now you can take it out or something. For delivery, I'll have to assign a delivery partner. So the creation is completely different for these. Versus over here, you can argue that the creation is not so different, like economy car or luxury car or SUV. I am just creating an object. Or if it was the case that I am actually creating the car, like for example, I have engine, I have I have engine, I have seats, and I'm actually creating the car, then it makes sense because see, the creation logic is different for SUV, for luxury car, for economy. But I am creating similar type of objects that come from the same parent. Does it make sense?
One doubt
Nilesh?
here.
Yeah.
So normally the creation, assuming the creation is being done, or let's say the basic properties are being defined in the constructor, right?
Hmm.
So why would we keep these if conditions in the base class? Rather, we can keep the common properties in the parent class and the different and the separate properties, right, in the base classes. Why to keep this in the if else case?
Okay, firstly, the properties are like that only. Like the properties that I have created are like this only. The point that I'm talking about is creation of objects. Now in the constructor, let's take the example of say dine-in order. Okay, so suppose you go like key create order. Now is it dine-in? Then for dine-in you will pass on the like number of you will pass on like number of people. For takeout you will probably pass a delivery number or something like that. For delivery you will assign this. In constructor, how many will you pass? How will you create the order? I'm talking about creation.
So actually, so Kirti, actually factory is mostly intended where we want code reuse, and we expect that in future the more number of objects, similar objects can come, right?
Correct.
So open
Correct.
close principle it will try to follow, and then the code reusability. So we can put the whole
Yes.
code in one particular class, and then other modules can directly use it. So that is the
Absolutely.
intent of it.
So let's talk about solid principles. How so we talked about how solid principles were not being followed when we were doing it in the same class, right? Now let's see that if we put the creation process into a factory class, how are we following the solid principles? So these are the guidelines that we have to follow, correct? So firstly, if how are we following the SRP principle? Because the creation logic is now going to the factory, right? So now factory is responsible for creation and rest everything we are doing in separate classes. How are we following the open close principle? How are we following it? Like for example, over here, say car for rent, SUV luxury, suppose we have another type that comes. The thing is that we will have to make change only in the factory. Whoever is using this car or whoever is using this order will not even come to know. See, basically, whoever said, call it a client, whoever is using this object, call it a client. Like, for example, if you were opening bank accounts, call me the client. I am just telling you that create this kind of bank account and give it to me. I don't care how you are creating it. You are abstracting that process from me. You're creating it and you're giving it to me. So tomorrow, if a new type comes or if a type stops, I will not even come to know. We will have to make change only in the factory. So that is why it is following open close principle. Also, it is extendable, it is maintainable. The client is not coming to know if you are adding new types of classes or we are removing some sorts of classes. How are we following LSP? We are following LSP. Why? Because in the end, car is going to be the base class and these are going to be the derived classes. And we are mostly going to use interfaces. I will show you in the code. So we'll end up following Liskov substitution principle also. Interface segregation, how? Because now we'll be creating, I will show you the code and it will be clearer, but there will be one interface whose sole purpose will be creation. And there will be an interface for product, like for car, there will be an interface. Then there will be products, SUV, luxury, economy. So we'll end up following I also. How are we following dependency inversion? What does dependency inversion mean? That high level should not have to depend on low level. So if I am the client, I should not have to depend on what exactly, like, how you are doing the creation process. I am dependent on what? I am dependent on, say, iCar. I am not dependent on SUV, luxury, economy. You will give me just iCar. You will create it and give it to me. So I'll end up following solid principles. Okay. I know it can get a bit confusing right now. Can we look at the code and it will get a bit clearer and then I will take up more questions. Can we take the code for now? Can we look at the code for now? Yes? Okay. Give me one sec.
Kirti, there was one question asking what is client. Can you just elaborate on what that is, the client? Like how do you?
Anyone who will be using the created objects. So someone factory is creating the objects. Anyone who will be using the created objects will be sort of the client. So anyone who is using the objects but does not care about how it is being created. That process is abstracted from the client. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I have understood, but others were asking. So,
Okay.
and as client, what is client?
Okay, cool. Can you all see my screen? Yes. Okay, so there are basically three types that we'll be looking at today. Simple factory, factory method, and abstract factory. We have started from simple factory. Let's understand this in detail first, and then we'll look at the rest of it. Okay, so simple factory, so I've written code in both C++ and Java. Let me first show you the code in C++. In Java, the only difference is in the syntax, so it will be clearer. Just remain patient with me. Okay. Now this is the main class. Okay, this is the main class. And what are we doing over here? Here there is a factory, and we are just telling the factory that create the logger. And I want, okay, what is the example that I have taken? That basically I am creating a logger. Now logger can have three types. It can be a debug, info, or error. So when I have a debug logger, you will obviously log on debug level. When I have an info logger, you're going to log on info level. When I have an error logger, you're going to log on error logger, error level. Does it make sense? Yes. So in terms of UML, you can just imagine that there is one I logger like this. So there is an I logger, and then there are three classes that are inheriting from I logger. One is your debug logger inheriting from I logger. Similarly, there is info logger that is inheriting from iLogger, and similarly there is error logger that is inheriting from iLogger. Does it make sense? Yes. Don't worry about pointers and all of that for now. Just focus on the factory design pattern. I will cover the details. Okay, cool. Okay, so now in the main class, if you notice, what am I doing? I am just telling the logger factory that you need to create a logger, and the level is debug, info, error. And then whatever logger I have, just notice over here that I am dealing with iLogger only. So remember that I am dealing with interface only. So this is basically I am dependency inversion principle. I am dependent only on abstraction layer. I am not dependent on debug logger or info logger or error logger. If you see over here, what I have included only logger factory. So tomorrow, even if there is no, if there is another one, like suppose instead of error, say there is another level, exception logger or something like that. So even if that comes, I will not have to make any change in this main. unless I have to use it. If I have to use it, obviously I will make the change. But if I don't have to use it, I won't have to make any change. We can easily add another logger without making any change over here. Does this much make sense to everyone? Can I get yeses? Is there any question in this part that over here, firstly, I am depending on the interface. I am not depending on debug logger or info logger or error logger. That is the first thing. Second thing is I can add another type of logger and I will not even have to worry over here. What am I saying? That only while creating, I am sort of taking an input. Like here I have passed debug info error. I could be taking an input from the client like this, like from someone. I could taking the input like this, and based on whatever runtime I have to decide that, okay, is it debug info or error, I can just pass it, and depending on that, the logger factory will create and give it to us. Yes. So yes, it can be runtime also. Okay. Now let's look at what is happening in logger factory. This is all that is there in logger factory. Now, why have I written static over here? Can someone tell me why I had written static over there? Can you tell me in chat? Why static?
Class
that our-
method.
Right. So if you notice over here, I am just doing logger factory : means for static, I'm not even creating logger factory ka object. I am just doing logger factory and then create logger. Correct. I am not creating any object of logger factory. I'm directly calling create logger and I'm just passing the level. So that is why in this logger factory, I've created as a static, and I am returning what? I'm returning the interface. Note that even the signature of the function, nothing is going to change if I add another logger level. If I add another level, nothing is going to change. Does it make sense? Yes. Now in this factory, basically this if else no, this like earlier you would have done probably on the client side or somewhere where there were more logic. Now we have just moved this if else in the factory. So basically this factory is responsible for creation. This is it. This factory, what is it doing? It is doing the creation of
It's
the object.
confusing actually. For C++, confusing. Can you please show some Java code?
I will show you both. I will show you
Getting-
both. Can you wait for 2-3 minutes? Like
Yeah,
I'll
sorry,
show
sorry.
you.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. See, I am returning the interface type, and I'm doing what? Say I'm creating debug logger or info logger or error logger, correct? And I'm just returning it from here. So this factory is responsible for creating the correct logger depending on whatever level is being passed. Okay. Now this debug logger, if you go inside this debug logger, what is it doing? When I call the log message, I'm just logging the message. By the way, all the code that I am showing you, it has been uploaded to the GitHub link that was shared. So there is a new repository, LLD demos. Within that, I have created simple factory method. All of this is available over there also. So if you are getting stuck somewhere, you can actually open it parallelly and you can look at that also in between. Okay, let's look at the Java code also, because it was getting a bit confusing, right, for Java people. So everyone, can I have full focus over here? Everyone is with me? Yes.
So one doubt in Java actually.
Yes.
What is the difference in this case? Like I'm pasting it in the chat. Like for example, class B is inheriting the class A. So via two ways we can create a object, right? What are the difference in these two statements?
Why was our factory an interface? That was the question, yeah?
No. I have pasted a code, like a pseudo code.
I cannot class A, class B, A equal to new B, B equal to new B. Okay, I guess you're a Java person. Can I at least first cover the Java code? Like only then
Okay.
you can ask. Okay, let me at least cover it. Yeah, thank you.
Kirti, I have a concern, please. While
Can you
running the
please
code,
let me cover the Java code? Then you can ask.
yeah, sure.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, see in Java also, this is the main. Here what we are doing is, so we are creating the logger. Now logger factory is creating the logger, and we are just giving the level debug info error. Again, as I was saying in C++, we can be taking the input. See, if you notice C++ and Java code, no, like the difference is very less. The difference is only in the syntax. Like here, there is a pointer. I am returning I logger factory create logger. Over here, if you see, I am creating logger. Logger is basically my interface. So if I go over here, You can say there's an interface. I should have named it iLogger. Let me just rename it. iLogger everywhere. Okay. So if you see over here, there is iLogger that I am dealing with. They can be debug level, debug logger, error logger, info logger. Now what is happening is that I know only the interface and I am telling you the level, and based on the level, you are going to print it for me. Can I run this also and show it to you guys that how it works? Okay, so currently where am I? Give me 1 sec. Give me 1 sec, guys. Factory. So let's run the C++ code first. Okay, I've created multiple. Oh, I went inside factory method. Oh, simple. Give me 1 sec, sorry. C++ and logger is the. Okay, so here you can see debug. This is a debug log. This is an info log. This is an error log. So if you see in this main, where did I write this debug info or error? It was within those particular loggers, right? So here, if it was from debug logger, there was debug. If there was from error logger, there was error. And if it was from info logger, there was info, correct? So if you see in main,
ఫిక్స్ అయింది మరి బేసిక్ గా సెకండ్ టైం పట్టే ఎందుకంటే అది ఫెరీలో రా.
Thank you for muting whoever did that. Okay. Coming back to this. Okay, so here you can see from the main, I don't have to worry. I am just giving a type of the log. Okay, I'm just giving the level of the log. And based on this level, I am getting the log. This was my message. This was my message. And you can see that based on what message I got that from that particular logger. Correct? Does this make sense, guys? Similarly, if I show you for Java. Here also you can see debug. This is a debug log message. This is an info log message, and this is an error log message. Here, let me show it to you. So in this interface iLog, what have I done? You just have to, because it is an interface, every logger that implements this iLogger will have to implement this log function, correct? So inside debug logger, there is one log. So here I've added debug and this. In error logger, again, there is log function, error and this. And in info also, again, there is one log info, correct? And in factory, what am I doing? There's the switch case that if it is debug, then create debug logger, otherwise info logger, otherwise error logger. Now, what are the doubts that you guys have? I'll pick it up. What are the doubts that you guys have? Pratik is saying
in the main function, sorry, in the main function in CPP, the log that you wrote, so that's the function that we are calling in the debug logger, right? So as to display the message.
So if you see, this is the log function that is there in iLogger. So this is virtual void equal to 0. Virtual void equal to 0 means what? That every logger that implements, basically this is an interface. So when I have done equal to 0, that means it became pure virtual. So that is why it is interface. So every logger that inherits from iLogger, basically error logger, debug logger, info logger, will have to have this log function. So all of them have their log, right? So debug logger has this debug in it, error has this error, and info has this info. Does it make sense?
Kirti, one question. Say, main in real life scenario, main client would be calling either of them. Just for the example purpose, you have shown that all three. But in real life, it will be only one, and the function which we are calling create logger will have only one of those parameter passed to it.
Correct.
And that parameter would be something which the client would be choosing out of the option given on the front end or whatever place. he will choose that, and accordingly he will get a corresponding object back, right?
Yes.
That is
Something
what
like
we.
this. This is something like this, correct? I just made the
Yeah.
changes. So there's just one level. So whatever basically level we want. Suppose I am debugging right now, so I want debug level. Or maybe I am like, some exception happened and I want some information that why it happened or what exactly was happening. So at that time, I will just enable the info level. Or maybe some error happened and I just want to see the error logs. I don't want to see debug or info. I will just pass error over here and I will just see the error logs. So whatever logger is there, so instead of debug logger, it will be just logger for me. See, I won't have to make any change. I will just take this information. I will just take this information that whatever is there, I will take this input and based on this, all the logging will happen. Suppose at the start, like whenever my system is coming up, at that time, I decide that right now I am checking for some errors. I don't want debug logs. I don't want info logs. I just want to see errors. So I will just at the spin of the system, I will just give error. And now because this is a logger, now everywhere this is there, right? So by default, everywhere I will see error logging. Now, sometimes what happens is that when it is error log or when it is info log, sometimes file is also passed. So in the creating part, no, there will be by default a file also, file name that you can pass. And in debug and in debug, you can just add it to say another file. In error, you can add to another file. In info, you can add to another live file. So all of this happens. But I hope you can understand the use case in real life, right? It can happen, no, that you are debugging or you just want to see the error logs or just the info logs. So this is where you will use it. Does it make sense?
Kirti, just for the sake of argument, right? I mean, is the logger factory not violating your open close principle?
It is a good, for the sake of what did you say? For the sake of argument, it is
Argument,
a
yeah.
good argument. We will take this up right after this.
And
Okay.
other thing that I have is with the advent of these frameworks these days, none of us create the objects by ourselves. Usually the frameworks does it. Given this the situation, do we really see in the real world scenario with the advent of frameworks, we really use this pattern?
See, we don't create framework related objects. I completely agree with you, but this is one of the most common design patterns that is used because every object you have to create and there are always similar type of objects that you have to create. I gave you around 15-20 examples where you might have to do, right? Like for example, your order type, you will end up creating an order, no? Or you will end up creating a product, right? You will end up creating an elevator. Now, creation of objects is the base, like before using any object. So it is used a lot. It is used a lot, trust me. Like this is one of the most common design patterns.
Okay, thanks.
Kit, I have a question. So what if I want to pass specific argument to each of the constructors, like maybe error?
So you can pass in this. So whatever argument you are passing, you can pass in this. And in this, in the logger factory, let's go in the logger factory. I'm still getting used to this. Logger factory. And then when you go into create logger, like over here, you can just have an argument. And like because when this create logger will be there for every this, right? Let me show you. Inside this create logger. When you do over here in debug logger, here the argument is there. You can just pass the argument like this. Correct? In debug logger or info logger. Make sense?
But I wanted to pass different arguments for different loggers. Is that
So
possible?
whatever logger level will be there, accordingly you will pass the argument, no?
A number of arguments. What about like different number of arguments? Sorry.
And then you can
That
probably
was-
send a list or you can send like a default arguments or a list.
Okay.
Right?
Sure. Thanks.
See, factory design pattern is used when you're creating similar objects. Usually, see, because there is one I logger, and from that you are having debug logger, info logger, error logger. They are similar or they are similar objects. Their parent is same, I logger, correct? So that is why you are okay. I'm just looking at the questions. So you will probably not have such cases. If such cases are there, if the number of arguments are different, then probably we can pick up different design patterns, and we'll look at those examples also. We'll look at more design patterns. This is just one possible creational design pattern, right? What is Pragma 1? So for C, like for those who don't know C++, this just makes sure that whatever I'm including, this gets included only once. So it is possible that inside this debug logger, I had already included ilogger, and inside this info logger also I had included ilogger. So instead of those files being including 2 times, Pragma once makes sure that the entire file is included only once. Okay. Cool.
I have
Guys.
a question.
Yeah.
So can we achieve this with inheritance, like with polymorphism? Why do we exactly need to use interface?
What do you mean by polymorphism and not interface?
Like we can have the same method and like override it wherever we need it, or maybe use like an abstract.
Isn't that what we are doing? We have a log and we are overriding the log in error info and debug.
Yeah, yeah. So this is an interface, right? Like why do we need an interface instead of a class?
Say interface because every class that comes from error info and debug should have a log. Otherwise, what will happen is that in my main, I am calling whatever, say, let me explain over here because I made the changes. Now I created a logger. Now suppose in the debug logger, I did not have any log function. Obviously this will break, right? So interface is what? It gives you a template. It sets your contract that every class that inherits from me will have to have this function, correct? That is why I have made an interface so that every class that is implementing this ilogger, whether it is error logger, debug logger, info logger, it doesn't matter. They will have to have this log, right? So I can use it. I don't have to worry that is this function there or not.
Okay, got it.
Makes sense? Yeah. Any other questions?
Just ask a question. So, for example, like you have used a static function in this case because you are just logging that. So that is not causing the thread safety problem because we are not updating any value or not modifying any value. But in spite of that, like if we are updating some value, then we shouldn't use a static, right? We should create the object.
You could create an object of the factory and then call from that. That's also fine. Like the factory design pattern doesn't say that you have to have factory, like you have to have static. I'm just saying that you have to have a factory for creation. I'm not saying that it should be static or anything like that.
Okay, and one more question. So for example, like if I throw an exception in the methods, like for example, in the log function, if I throw an exception, so should it be in the interface layer, like log throws exception, or how it should be basically? So I can handle the. So for example, can you show your code? I can tell you like.
Can you explain? Like I will.
For example, we have a method like a log right now, and if you put some like a throws exception, for example, in the log method we are throwing an exception, right? So ideally, in the exception in the method itself of the interface, which is a log, we should do the throws exception, or how we should handle it in these scenarios.
I see, we are creating the objects. If there is an exception, you can handle it there itself, right? So if you want to handle the exceptions differently for all the 3 objects, you can do that. Like, I don't understand what is like special about this case. You're creating the objects separately. So you can handle how the exception will handle inside that, like while creating a particular type of object, a particular type of logger.
But the exception should not be handled in the first layer, or should it be handled in the third layer? For example, in your case, like in the log method is a third layer, log is the interface, and the first layer is where you're creating the object. So in the factory class where we are creating the object, there we should handle the exceptions, or inside those classes we should handle the exceptions.
How, like wherever they like, see, in factory there is nothing happening. We are just telling that the log is going to happen inside that particular class, right? So we are not actually doing anything under the factory or like interface or anywhere, right? The log is happening inside that, but like inside the concrete classes function only, right? In the end, in the derived classes function. So that is where obviously you will take care of exception.
Okay.
Like, because you are not doing anything in factory. What are you doing in the factory? There is just an if else, that if this is the type, you create this type. If this is the type, you create this type. If this is the type, you create this type. That is all that is there in factory, right?
But
So
we have the
the exception. Sorry?
Yeah, Rohit, I guess exception handling is not a part of factory pattern. If we want to handle any kind of exception, we can write our own custom exception handling. Like factory pattern general says anything specific about you need to handle exception and all. We can write our own.
See, that is the whole point, that we are only taking care of the creation over here. Single responsibility. Wherever we are logging at that time, we can take care of the exception. Like wherever we are logging, like for debug logger, we are logging, right? Or for error logging, we are logging. So at that level, you can handle the exception.
So basically at client level, exceptions will be handled.
So I got your, like what you're trying to say is just like maybe if they have something like which is common exception, like for example, you have given the example of the order. There can be 3 kind of orders, diagonal order or something. If they have a common type of exception, so rather than handling in each method, shouldn't we handle in the factory itself? That's what my question, like
firstly, okay, let's understand what is the use of this. See how the order is being processed, and that is going to be discussed in different design patterns, or how you're going to use it. What are we using factory for? Creation. Is exception happening in creation? That is my first question to you. Is it happening during the creation? Is it happening during using the process, using the object?
Using the object.
Then it should not be related to factory. Factory is doing what? It is just doing the creation. How you use the object is either in the client, or further you will use some other design patterns, structural, behavioral, all that will come into picture. Factory will only do the creation. I can pick it up again after 11 if you want. Okay. For now, let's move ahead. But does everyone understand?
Sorry,
Yeah.
one basic doubt. What is the use of this factory design pattern? Because we can directly create the object like using the new keyword.
It is like I
So what is
ended up
the
telling the entire Ramayan and you are asking who is Ram. But okay. See, the point of the factory design pattern is that you do not do the creation where you are using it. Okay. I as a client, or I as a user of an object, don't want to know how you are creating the object. I just want to use my object. We are following solid principles. Single responsibility, right? So single responsibility, I am giving the creation responsibility to factory. I as a client don't want to deal with creation. Open closed. How open closed? If I add new types of objects, either order or logger or whatever type of new object that comes over here, we have taken so many. In a hotel room, if I introduce another type of room, as a client, I shouldn't have to care. You can do it in factory, create new rooms, very good. Until and unless as a client I'm using them, I shouldn't have to bother. In elevator, if you add another type of elevator, good. Your problem, factory's problem. I as a user, as client, don't want to deal with how you are doing the creation if you're adding new things. Okay, SRP, O, interface aggregation, all of this solid. How are we following Liskov substitution? Everywhere you saw, we were using iLogger, right? It was like this. So there was iLogger. If you see the diagram, it looks like this. iLogger, debug logger, error logger, and info logger, right? So everywhere I am dealing with iLogger, I am dealing with the abstraction layer. I am not dealing with debug logger or error logger or info logger. So that is why anywhere that I use iLogger, I can replace it with debug logger also, error logger also, info logger also. So I'll end up following L of solid, right? How am I following I? I have divided into smaller interfaces. How am I following D? I am depending on the abstraction layer, not on the low level modules. Does it make sense?
Yes, Kirti, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Guys, everyone has understood solid, has understood factory design pattern. Can I get yeses?
Ma'am, whether like, is it like a factory method pattern?
We are coming to it. We are coming to it. Relax. We are going to discuss the variations of it. Okay.
Hello, Kirti.
Hi.
Yeah, I just wanted to understand how this iLogger you mentioned that it will replace the debug logger. Can you just
So
give me insight?
I was talking about solid, right? So what does L say? Liskov substitution, right? So it
Yes, yeah.
means that wherever I am using my iLogger, I should be able to replace it with debug logger or error logger or info logger, and it should work seamlessly, correct?
Okay, fine, fine.
So wherever I was
Got it.
using iLogger, like I was doing iLogger ka log, right? So I can do debug logger ka log. That is what I was saying. Make
Got
sense?
it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Quick revision. When are we going to use factory design pattern? Whenever we want to encapsulate object creation process. One thing, encapsulate object creation process. If we are not creating objects, you do not have to think about factory design pattern. Creation of similar objects. Firstly, creation. Second important term, similar objects. Objects that will have, if in simple terms, that can be inherited from the same parent. Similar behavior. So creation, objects of similar behavior. So we allow adding new types of objects without modifying the existing code. That is why we are following open close also. We can create based on runtime input parameters also. As I said, we can take input that, okay, this is the logger level that I want, and we can switch accordingly, right? I can also switch between the creation process. Maybe if this is the input, create like this or create like this. Factory can do that, right? So used for creating closely related objects or objects with similar behavior. Creation, objects of similar behavior. Two important points to remember in factory. Everyone has understood? Yes. What are we doing? We are just taking the creation part and moving it to factory class. What is factory class responsible for? Creation of objects. That's it. Okay, guys, we have two very important topics to cover. I think the class will get extended by 11:30 till 11:30 today. So please stay with me. Let's do quickly. Okay, let's pick up more questions after 11 now. Okay, cool. Now, one good question that came. Okay, so we have a factory. So we had a logger factory. Inside that logger factory, there was this if else, right? That if this, then do, if not this, then do this, if this, then do this, right? The question that came, it was a very good question, whoever got it. So that if a new type comes, if a new type of logger comes, so suppose there were only error and info right now. If I have to introduce debug, I will have to in the end make change to the logger factory, correct? Yes. I do make change to the logger factory. We said we are following open closed. How? Because we are making the change only in the logger factory, but we are still making the change in the logger factory. So what we did till now was simple factory method. It was a simple factory pattern. Okay. Now the next variation that we are doing, we are going to try to solve this problem also. That in the logger factory also, I don't have to make any change. Does it make sense? What I'm talking about? Yes, no? The problem that I'm trying to solve, everyone understands this? Okay. So now what am I going to do is, while creating the logger, no, I will say that create a particular, like I give no that debug or info or this. Now from this logger factory also, I will create different factories. Error factory, info factory. Like earlier, what I was doing, like this was there, right? So logger was there, then there was info logger, error logger, and there was debug logger. Correct? Now for factory also I am adding this. Now what is happening is that when I add a new type of logger, I don't even have to make any change in the factory. I will seamlessly just inherit from this and I will just implement another factory. Let me show this to you. Okay. Do you get the mota the problem that we are trying to solve? Does everyone understand the problem that we are trying to solve? Can I get quick yeses? Yes. From simple factory to this factory. Yes? Okay. Now let's see how we can solve it. Let me share my screen again. Okay. So that was simple factory. This is factory method. Okay. Now here I have taken two examples, logger and furniture. I have implemented both in C++, Java. All the code is there on the GitHub. Okay. For now, let's look at the the logger itself, the example that we took, and let's see how is it different. Now see, in the main, what we are doing is, in the main, give me 1 second. Okay, let's do first in Java. Java folks are feeling bad. Okay, let's do first. Oh, I have not added the Java code right now. Okay, we will do abstract factory first in Java. Okay, sorry, I have not added Java code for now. Okay, so here, what am I doing is that here I am dealing with logger factory. So there is iLogger factory, and they can be info logger, they can be error logger, they can be debug logger. But if you see, I am creating logger factory first, right? So if you see, I could have done this. These two might not be there. And then I can just remove this for you to understand. So if there is logger factory, I can just put any logger over here. So there is any logger, I can put it like this. Okay, and delete. Why am I doing this? I am showing you that if there is any type of logger, you just have to mention over here that what factory you are using. It could be info, it could be error, it could be debug. Here also you're dealing with interface, here also you're dealing with interface. So iLogger factory and iLogger. Guys, don't fight C++, Java, C#. What are you guys, small kids or what? Only syntax is different. Shh, focus. All of you focus. Don't distract me. What kids you guys are fighting day and night, C++, Java, Python. Please focus over here. Okay. So here you can see that I am dealing with what? I am dealing with interfaces. So I am dealing with iLogger factory and iLogger. I don't know what you are talking about, like whether it is debug, info or error. Only the first time when I'm creating it, I will give okay info or error or debug. Yes. Now what is happening is that there is one. Guys, I know it will be confusing in the starting. It is fine. We will also look at a lot of implementations of these design patterns and it will get clearer. Okay. So don't get very disheartened if you're not able to understand in once, especially if you're a beginner. These are sort of hard concepts that we have moved on to now. Okay. So stay patient over here. Okay. Now, like iLogger was there, and in iLogger, we saw that there is a log function, and this is virtual void means what? Basically, this is an interface, and all the loggers will have to implement this log. So whether there is error logger, here you can see log. Whether there is debug logger, here you can see log. Whether it is info logger, here you can see the log, correct? Similarly, the logger factory also. Now it is what? It is an interface. No, sorry, the iLogger factory. Where is iLogger factory? Yeah, this is an interface now. Now see, when you add another type of logger, I won't have to make any change in this, correct? You saw what was there in simple factory, right? In simple factory, if you saw in the logger factory, there was if else, correct? So we would, if we add another level, we will have to make a change over here, right? Versus now, I won't have to make the change. Why? Because here I have just written a virtual function, virtual and equal to 0. That means pure virtual. In terms of Java, take of it as this is an interface. So you will be implementing all the logger factories from here. So if a new type of logger factory comes, suppose there is error logger factory, you will just have to create new error logger factory. You can very nicely implement it and you won't have to make any change in the factory. Any of the code that was written earlier won't have to be changed. You will just add very nicely this error logger factory and then the error logger factory can be used. Do you understand? Can I get yes or no instead of saying stupid
Can you repeat this part, please?
Kirti, can you explain with UML diagram?
Yes, I'll explain it. For now, okay, let me explain this once more. Okay, let's look at the logger factory that we saw earlier. Everyone's understood this, that there's an if else in the logger factory, correct? So if I add new type, I will have to add another if condition over here, right? So we are violating the open close principle. If I add another level, I will have to make change over here. Does everyone understand this much? Can I get yes? Can I get everyone thumbs up? Everyone has understood this much? Yes? Okay. So I'll have to make the change over here. Now I am trying to solve this problem. How am I solving this problem? In my logger factory, I have made it an interface. And what happens now from this iLogger factory, there are 3 logger factories that are coming. There is one debug logger factory, there is one error logger factory, and there is one info logger factory. Now, what I am doing in my main is that I am saying that create a logger factory, and I'm telling that logger that you create a logger. So you see here, I am dealing with what? I am dealing with whatever iLogger factory returned to me. I don't even know whether this is error, debug, or info. I can use it very nicely. Why can I use it very nicely? Because every factory has this create logger. That is the use of having interface. When I have an interface, they will be forced to have this class, this function create logger. And if you see this create logger is there in debug logger factory also, we are creating the debug logger and sending it. And what are we sending? iLogger. So I don't care whether it is debug logger or error logger, whatever. You are creating it and you are sending it to me. For now, I'm just doing new, but there might be a complete creation process. And this logger factory will take care of that. Similarly, there is one error logger factory that is going to take care of this. Similarly, info logger factory that is going to take care of this. Yes, yes. So I am putting all the custom logic of creating the error logger, and I don't even have to make the change in the factory. Does it make sense? Can I explain with the UML? Is the code part clear?
Kirti, when you saying not make change in the if statement, you mean to say you can add new class which will be will be narrating from your next layer of factory, right?
Yes. So there is one logger factory, right? So I will just add, suppose error logger factory is not there. Only debug logger and info logger is there. Now, if I have to add error factory, I just have to create this new class. No, I don't have to make change anywhere else.
Okay.
I know that
You
understand this. What? Sorry.
Understood.
See,
iLogger is also an interface, and debug logger factory and error logger factory, these are also interfaces.
Yes, so we are using two interfaces.
Can
Earlier,
an interface implement an interface?
Yes, so see, earlier there was iLogger, right? And we were implementing the log functions in the debug logger, info logger, error logger. Now logger factory is also interface, and we are implementing create logger also. So there are two interfaces, and we are implementing both. One is taking care of creation, one is taking care of how the logging is happening.
Thank you.
Kirti, does this translate to not using simple factory pattern and use the later version?
That's what I was about to say, that usually see, if you see my factory design pattern on the channel, I have covered only simple factory design pattern. And in any of my interviews so far, I have always talked about simple factory only because there is less time and all of that. But in terms of work and in terms of daily work, what is going to happen is factory method is better, right? Because open close. So in real work, I guess you will be using it more. But usually people just do simple factory and they are like, okay, this much is fine. We have put creation logic in one. We will just make some change in FLs. This is sort of a better version of that, right? So if you want to be better at it, you can do this also. Now there's another version, abstract factory, that we will do after this. This is not abstract factory. There are 3 types of patterns. One is simple factory that we first discussed. This is factory method. Next one we will discuss after this. But let's quickly revise also these two. What is the differences between this? So that everyone is clear before we go ahead.
Kirti, can you before that can you go to the main file where you instantiate the 3 objects?
Mm-hmm.
Can you show us the main class? Don't we lose the runtime benefits that we were getting previously, where earlier we just could take an input and
that's what I did earlier also to show you. See, here there is a logger factory. Just remove this and whatever is there from this. Okay, and whatever logger, this logger. Okay, if you think of it like this, if I have to use only one, in the starting, I can tell that if it is info, I will just create an info logger factory, or I will create an error logger factory, or I will create a debug logger factory. So once I create this factory, like based on the input, I can just create one type of factory, and from there I don't have to care about it. Yeah, that part it does become a bit complex, that I have to create a factory now according to the input runtime. But there's a huge advantage also, that we never have to make any change when a new type is introduced.
Yep. Basically, we are just shifting the if-else ladder that we had there to this place, right?
Creating the factory to creating the factory. Correct.
Okay.
But Kirti, in this example of yours, now every time if I'm adding new, say, um, logger, right? Then my main code has to get changed because you're writing new name of that but debug logger. Then if you open that code of yours once, but then that is not static. No? Like you have to write something generic on the client side and pass it as an argument.
I agree. So there are two things I would like to say. This is one of the reasons that simple factory is, I guess, the more common one. Secondly, based on input, if you have to do this, like maybe at the time of like on basis of configuration, that you make this config change, and on the base of that config, the factory will be created. So in the starting, if you can put this if else, it is better than making change in the factory, like because then you will have to look at the configuration. So it is where would you like to make the change? Is it like, would you like to make change in the factory versus you would like to make the change while creating the factory? Yes. We will obviously have to make a change somewhere.
No, that is understood. Now you have shifted to client only, na. In this example of yours, I have changed and I'm now changing it at the client side. In this example of yours, I have moved it towards the client. So every time I have to.
I get that. You are right. But see, there are ways of handling that. Again, while creation of the factory, you can probably move to another one. And I guess this is where abstract factory will come into picture. Let me explain your abstract factory also, and probably it will get clearer because there will be creating factories of factory.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, Kirti.
Yeah.
Kirti, Mithun here. For what Mani is asking, see, one is the factory, what you said will come from configuration. So that is where you can use the normal factory method. But for the other one, how you can deal with it is through DLLs. Like you can just replace the DLL or the binary, and it will load the appropriate factory and it would work. So that way there will be no change even in the client side.
Correct.
Is my input.
Very good point. Yes.
Yeah, but how will you change the DL? It should also have some logic, no? Which DLL will you use?
Also, yeah, so that is the open close thing, right? You can create new DLLs and then you can replace it in the or maybe you can use load library. So like that.
Yeah, so the thing is, again, the load library will have some kind of algorithm, which library to load, right?
So basically anyway, there will be some changes in the code, because if we talk about the library or DLL, if there is some modification in the library and we want to use the newer version, we have to make changes at the client if we want to have the newer version of the library, that functionality.
Yeah, so there are two things. When we mean changes in the client, one is like restart the client, or do we have to recompile the client? So recompiling is bad, I think. If it is just a restart, that's good.
Okay, guys, I think we have. Can we can discuss this later, because I think a lot of people are getting very overwhelmed with seeing DLL and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, so actually, Kirti, it's more about where we are trying to create the concrete objects, not the this factory. So earlier also.
Your voice got cut.
Hello.
Your voice got cut. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I was saying that it is more about where we are trying to create the concrete objects, like in your case, the order, like the concrete objects. So earlier we are creating concrete objects inside the factory, the simple factory. Now the creation of concrete objects is also one level is gone down inside the factory.
Correct.
But inside the client, we are creating the factories, not the concrete objects.
Yep. See, okay, let me quickly revise it for you, that what are the pros and cons and how things are working out. We will be implementing this factory method, abstract factory, in a lot of examples. Okay, it will get clearer. For now, if you are understanding this topic for the first time, it can be overwhelming, but I don't want you to leave. Okay, please stay and please try to understand. It is fine. We will understand it. Okay, we also have to understand one more design pattern after this. So be patient, try to understand. And the third one is a bit more complex. Okay, so positive attitude, everyone. Okay, let's try to see what all we have done so far. Okay, so what we did was that earlier, if the client is using a particular object, and there are different kind of objects that can be created, similar type of objects, like we saw order, right? Like we saw logger. Now these are similar objects or objects with similar behavior. So instead of doing the creation also and using it over here, usage or whatever processing, right? So what we did, the creation part, we moved to a factory. So that is what we did in factory design pattern. What happened in factory was that basically there was an if else, that if this is the value given to me, create this type of class. If this is the value given to me, if this type of class. If this is the value given to me, create this type of class. So this factory is doing what? It is doing creation. Now what we said that I will have to add a like if else over here, right? And I am sort of violating open close principle. I still have to make a change over here. Now the thing is, we will have to make change somewhere, right? But instead of making in factory, there's another way. The way is that the factory also you created is an interface, like how we had iLogger. Now from this, there is debug logger, there is error logger, and there is info logger, right? Now, there was already these loggers were implementing what? Log function. So they were implementing. So if you see, it should be a dotted line, correct? They were implementing log function in debug logger, error logger, info logger. Now what I did, I created one interface, iLogger. And from this, I implemented what? I implemented 3 factories. Debug logger factory, error logger factory, and info logger factory. Correct? Now, once I have inherited these factories, once I've implemented these factories, what is the advantage is that tomorrow if a new factory comes, I won't have to make any change in any of this code. Okay, only while creating the factory, I will have to see that, okay, now I have to create a new factory. So until I have to use it, first I won't have to make any change. I can seamlessly add another factory. So what I would do over there is that whatever based on the factory that I have. So I will do basically I factory. Sorry. So I will have an I factory and I will say create logger. And this will return me what? This will return me iLogger, which is this. And from iLogger, I will do log. And basically, I will end up calling either of these 3 functions. Right? So you notice that I am dealing with iFactory, iLogger. I am dealing with 2 interfaces. At no point I am dealing with low level modules. I am not dealing with debug logger factory, error logger factory, or info logger factory, or I am not dealing with debug logger, error logger, info logger. Does it make sense? Yes? Guys?
So
awake? Everyone awake?
One doubt here. So normally in the industry, is it like the factory, suppose we are creating a system like it, so the factory, let's say the factory is responsible only for the creating of object. So is it like only the create object function resides there? Because if we are removing it, then what is the point of having it, right?
Sorry, I didn't, can you repeat it? I couldn't get it properly. Can you repeat it?
So for example, here we are having iFactory logger, right? So, and we created 3 children out of it. and the only function was there in the I. There was only one function, right, in the I factory.
Create logger.
Yeah, create factories, or like, yeah, create object was over there. So if we are taking that also, then what is the point of having that file? Is it like that file also might contain some other methods also?
No, it will contain only the creation part, and that is why you will see in most of the cases, like we create them static only. That we don't want to create an object, like we make the function static and we use it. And that is why you will see a lot of places where factory is used, because there's only one function. You can just use it from the class and you don't want to create an object. A lot of times it will be static and you won't bother creating objects. But the point over here is that you're following SRP and the creation part that particular class is doing.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Guys, can we get to the? Yeah.
I have a question. So the implication is that the debug logger. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, tell me.
So the implication is that in the factory method, we have the debug logger factory and the info logger factory or logger factory. They don't have any common functionality between them. Is that the implication?
They don't have any common function. They have the functionality of creating the corresponding logger, like create logger, and they will generate their own logger, that debug logger or info logger or like whichever logger they are creating. They will do that, but they are implementing the same function.
Okay.
This is how the Spring Boot auto wiring works.
Okay, guys, that is a very, I don't want to pick up such questions right now. Can we for now concentrate on this? Yes. Can we move on? Because others will not understand. Let's take these questions after 11. Yes.
But the downside of this is we pollute the classes, right? Because you don't know.
Can you please repeat that example once again before moving?
Okay, quickly I will repeat it and then I will move ahead, guys. I will take up questions only after 11 now. Okay. So here, see, there is one iLogger. iLogger is implementing three, like there are three loggers that are inheriting or that are implementing this iLogger. iLogger has a virtual function, pure virtual function, or you can say it is an interface, and the function is log. Now, all of these loggers have to implement this function log, right? Debug logger, error logger, info logger, correct? So all of them will have log. So this is one thing. Now, what we did in Simple Factory was that we were creating in factory, and now whatever type of logger we have, debug logger or error logger or info logger, I was just saying iLogger, right? So whatever was there, and I was just saying log, because it can be, or this can be confusing. So I'm just going to say iLogger.log. Okay, so this can be of debug type or error type or info type. So I'm just saying log, and whatever was the type, I will get that kind of log, like debug or info or error, right? Now what I said, that in factory also, in order to avoid adding new if else statement, what we can do is create factory itself as interface. Now there are different factories implementing this factory. There is debug logger factory, error logger factory, info logger factory, correct? Now debug logger factory will do what? It will, now all three of them, which function they're implementing? Create logger. Here, what was the function they were implementing? Log. Here, what are they implementing? Create logger. So create logger will be implemented in debug logger factory, error logger factory, info logger factory. But debug logger factory will create which type of logger? Debug logger. Here, what sort of logger will be created? Error logger. Here, what sort of logger will be created? Info logger, right? But in the end, what we'll have? We will have iLogger factory. So what we will do? We will do iLogger factory dot create logger. Now this is going to give us what? It is going to give us iLogger, this part, and we can do iLogger.log. Clear? Can I get quick yeses? And now I want to move ahead. Guys, everyone, yes, I want full energy now. Come on. I want more yeses, more yeses. Come on, everyone awake. Please drink some sip of water, have a sip of water. This is very important concepts. Okay, cool. Now, moving on to even further level. Okay, everyone with me, full attention over here. Okay, so we will take a lot of examples, but let's start from one example. So there is one client, basically anyone who is using, right? So here we are trying to create a car and a bike. Okay. Now car and a bike are obviously vehicle. So you will do what? You will say car with this, and you will say, so for creation, we will do what? We will have a vehicle factory. Correct? Now I am telling you that I don't just want a car and a bike, but I will also give you a brand. Suppose I will give you that I want Maruti, or I want Skoda, or I want Hyundai. And depending on what I tell you, you are supposed to be creating these kinds of cars. So it could be a Maruti car, it could be a Skoda car, or it could be a Hyundai car. Okay, now it could be a Hyundai bike, or it could be a Toyota bike, or a Hero bike. Make sense? This is the kind of problem that we are trying to solve. Yep. Guys, yes or no? Guys, please stop talking nonsense on the group. It is very distracting. Okay. Now in this, basically the point is that we will have different factories. Now it is okay. It is going to be overwhelming for a while. Now let me explain a bit more and then we will understand. In this factory, we will have, say, Hyundai factory. And we will have Toyota factory. So now what is going to happen is this Hyundai factory will create Hyundai car and it will create Hyundai bike. Okay, similarly, Toyota will create Toyota. There will be a Toyota car, so it will create Toyota car and Toyota bike. Let me take another example. Okay, let's take the example of us creating some UI. Okay, so UI is, say we have to create a button and we have to create a text box. Now button and text box we have to create. Very nice, right? So these are basically some UI elements. But in this also, I want to create Mac button and Windows button. Or I want to create Mac text box or I want to create Windows text box. Okay. And so what I will do is there will be one factory, one upper level factory will be there. But what from here, I will have two more factories. I will have one Mac factory and I will have one Windows factory. It's okay. I will make it clearer. Don't worry. So now what will happen is Mac factory will create Mac button and Mac text box. Windows factory will create Windows button and Windows text box. A bit clearer? Yes. Let us take more examples. Does it make sense a bit, guys? Yes, no. Basically, if you notice over here, we are creating a factory of factories. So there is one GUI factory and it is either creating Mac factory or Windows factory. So there's a factory of factories. So we will be creating factories over there. Yes, let's take more examples. Suppose let's go to Swiggy Zomato. So there is one food item that we are creating. Okay. Now food item could be, say, appetizer. It could be main course or it could be dessert. Okay. Now there is, but in all this, give me one sec. Now in all this, I want for cuisine also. So suppose I have a cuisine factory. Now within this cuisine factory, it can be, say, Indian factory and Italian factory. Right? So what is going to happen is this Indian factory will create what? It will create Indian appetizer and Indian main course and Indian dessert. Right? Versus Italian factory will create what? It will create Italian appetizer, Italian main course and Italian dessert. So basically Indian is creating Indian and Italian is creating Italian. See, now I don't know how many of you are noticing, but if you go to understand this from code, it might have been very, very hard. But from a diagram, it is much easier. Can't you see that? Like if you start understanding from code, you will go crazy. There is a cuisine factory, there is Indian factory, there is Italian factory. How do I even visualize this? But this you will be able to visualize much better because you see a pattern, right? Client button, text box. Okay, there's button, there's text box. There are types of buttons. Mac button, Windows button, Mac text box, Windows text box. Correct? Similarly, over here also, there is car, bike. There are types of car and bikes depending on the brands. Similarly, over here, depending on the OS, we are deciding button and text box. Here, depending on the cuisine, we are deciding our food item. Let's take one more example. Okay. So suppose we have furniture factory. Okay. So there is one furniture factory. And we are creating three things. So we are creating a sofa, we are creating a chair, and we are creating a table. Okay. So now furniture factory, we have two factories. One is our modern factory that is going to create modern furniture for us. And then there is what? There is traditional factory that is going to create traditional furniture for us, correct? So what we are going to do is here sofa, basically there can be, sorry, two types. Sofa can be of two types, modern sofa, traditional sofa, modern chair, traditional chair, modern table, traditional table, correct? So modern factory will create modern sofa, modern chair, modern table. Our traditional factory will create traditional sofa, traditional chair, traditional table. Make sense? Does this much make sense? Yes. Yes. Okay. Can we look at the UMLs? Can we look at the code? Good enough examples. You have understood some idea that here, see, we are creating similar type of objects. See here, car and bike were similar type of objects, but we added another level. What was the level? The brand was another level. So we had to create a factory of factories, right? Here also, button and text box was similar objects. So we wanted one factory for that. But now we add another level, Mac button, Windows button, depending on the OS. That is why we need two factories. So GUI factory is a factory of factories, Mac factory and Windows factory. Similarly, over here, cuisine factory is a factory of two factories, Indian factory and Italian factory. Similarly, furniture factory is a factory of two factories, modern factory, traditional factory. Does it make sense? Good number of examples. Yes. Can we look at the code, UMLs, all of that? Okay.
Kirti, how do we add more to it? Like add in sense, if I want to add, say, like Chinese, Indian, and you say, let's say I want to add Japanese now, let's say. So where will I make that change? Like that's solid. It's solid.
Let me show you. Okay. Can you see this? I am on my GitHub itself. So you can actually check. I've uploaded everything, abstract factory, factory method, simple factory. If anything is missing, I'll add it. Okay. Over here, you can see that this is the example that I gave, right? For vehicle and for client, correct? So now the question was, suppose in this car bike, suppose a truck comes, correct? So where all we would have to make changes. Firstly, we would have to add another truck over here. So from client, we'll have to have another truck. Now the truck can be, suppose let's assume Hyundai and Toyota make trucks. So we'll have a Hyundai truck and Toyota truck. So that will be seamless. No one else has to make change. But Hyundai factory and Toyota factory will have to make the changes because they are the ones who are creating the trucks, right? So they will have to make the changes for that, right? So this level of factories will have to make changes for any new type of objects that come. But if you see, none of this will have to change. This also won't have to change. Only the factory that is responsible for creating that new object will have to make a change. Yes. Guys, please mute yourself. There's a lot of disturbance. Srihari, can you please mute yourself? Yeah, thank you. So here, see again, this is the example that we saw, right? Button, text box. So these are inheriting from button. These are inheriting from text box, GUI factory. Yes, please once more explain. Okay. So let me give you another example. Very nice net is coming. I'm guessing you guys might be seeing very bad net quality today. Okay. Is it loaded? No. Okay. Let me first cover the code and then we will come to the UML part again. So in abstract factory, I have written two codes. One is for the furniture example and one is for the UI example. And I have written both in C++ and Java. This time, let's first look at Java code. So let's start from the UI example. Okay. So Java, this is the UI class. This is the main class. Okay. Here I am saying, give me the machine OS and I am inputting the OS type. Okay. Once I input the OS type, I am telling GUI factory. Remember the GUI factory? It is creating a factory. Now GUI factory will create iFactory. What is iFactory? Let's see. Guys, relax. I will compare all the three design patterns also. For now, let's try to understand the code. Yeah. Okay. So let's understand what is GUI abstract factory, what is iFactory. Okay. So firstly, there was I button, where there was I text box. This much is clear. There were two interfaces, I button, I text box. I button has press, I text box has set text. These are interfaces. So any type of button will have to implement press. Any type of text box will have to implement set text. So similarly, if it is Mac button or Windows button, both will have to have the function press. So I have just written output statements for now. Mac button pressed, Windows button pressed. Okay. Similarly for text box, it will be either Mac text box or Windows text box, right? And they will have to implement which function? This set text function. So they have implemented this set text function. So setting text in Mac text box, setting text in Windows text box. Correct? What is override? Override means I am overriding this function, set text. I am implementing it basically. Correct? So I am implementing this set text and press. Okay. Then there was one interface iFactory. Now iFactory is doing what? It is being implemented by Windows Factory and Mac Factory. Right? So what is happening is this iFactory should create, any factory should create a button and a text box. So whether it is Windows Factory or Mac Factory, they will have to implement this create button and create text box. Correct? Please mute yourself. So Windows Factory will create Windows button. It will return new button, and Windows text box will create Windows text box. Right? Similarly, Mac Factory will create Mac button and Mac text box. Does it make sense? So there was I button, I text box. Then there was Mac button, Windows button. Then there was Mac text box, Windows text box. Right? Now let's see what was happening in main again. Okay, the GUI factory was the factory of factories, right? This is the abstract factory. Now see, there is one abstract factory. This factory is responsible for, it is responsible for creating factories. It is supposed to be complicated, guys. You're doing high level stuff now. Now we are not doing solid and all. We have leveled up. Okay. It is going to be confusing, but you are going to level up and it is going to be easier for you in 1 to 2 weeks. Now solid seems much easier, right? Because you are doing this. It will get clearer. Just focus. Okay. This is the factory that will create factories. So what is it doing? It is returning iFactory. What are we doing? We are creating the factory inside this based on the OS type. So if OS type is Windows, we are returning Windows factory. If it is Mac, we are returning Mac factory. Yes. So yes, if new truck is added, yes, we will have to make changes over here. If there's a new OS, we will have to add that, okay, there is a new factory that is added and we will have to make changes. We will have to add a factory also. Yep.
And cool. why do we need this GUI abstract factory? Where will it be used? Well, in main client, it will be used, is it?
Yes. So this is, so basically when we take the OS, this abstract factory will be told that this is the OS type and you create the factory. See, now OS type is told to only this GUI abstract factory. Now this is giving us iFactory. Now after this, if you see, this is sort of similar to the factory method, what we were doing, right? Once we got the factory, after that we were just saying create button and create text box. Yes. So basically, if you see the middle one that we did, the factory method pattern was sort of the middle level of simple factory and abstract factory. Yes. Okay. Guys, have you understood basics for now? Okay, let me walk you through C++ also. So in C++, I've written the entire thing in one class only to avoid like making it too hard for you to understand. Okay. So here again, I input type the OS type, and then only the abstract factory was passed the OS. And based on whatever that was there, the I factory was created. The interface was created. Now, whatever in like factory was there, that factory I told that create button, press it. Same I told that create text box and set it. Yes. Okay. Okay, let's look at the UML and this side by side. Give me one sec. Okay, so UI1 is open. So let's see the UI1 properly. Okay. So here there's a button, there is a text box, correct? So let's see button and text box. So there is one button, there is one text box. There is press and set text box. Pure virtual means it is interface. So button and text box are there. This is button, this is text box, correct? This is not the detailed UML, guys, that I have made. In detailed UML, we should be writing whatever functions that minus plus we should be adding on to that. This is not the detailed UML. This is just for you to understand the structure. Okay. So there's button, there's text box. From button, there is Mac button and Windows button, right? So there is Mac button and there is Windows button. Mac button pressed, Windows button pressed. Correct? Then there is from text box, there is Mac text box and Windows text box. So from text box, there is Mac text box and Windows text box. Correct? Similarly, over here, there is one GUI factory, and from here, there is Mac factory and Windows factory, right? So this is your GUI factory. From GUI factory, there is coming Windows factory and Mac factory. And they are doing what? They are creating the button and creating the text box. So if you see over here, they are creating the button and creating the text box, creating the button, creating the text box. Yes? It is okay if you're finding it hard for now, but are you able to visualize a bit? Does it make sense? Factory or factories? Yep. Okay. Let's see one more example, the furniture example that I said. Let's look at the Java part of the furniture example. So what did we see? Can you all like, okay, first of all, one homework is that you all have to see this and make the detailed UML. That is one thing. Secondly, I will be giving you, so first I want to, in your groups, I wanted to start implementing calculator, like calculator code. And I want you all to implement abstract factory in that. And you have to think of more use cases for factory, abstract factory. So all of this, I will write it down properly on Discord and on mail. Like I will give you a lot of homework for the weekend. So, and we will keep discussing on Discord also, so that whatever doubts you have, once you actually implement the code, once you draw the UML, no, it will be much clearer. Like if you see the UML, it will be much clearer that, okay, this is how it is working. Let's see, again, the furniture part. So you remember the first three boxes that I made was sofa, chair, table, correct? Now from sofa, there were what? Modern sofa and modern chair, right? Sorry, they were like modern sofa, modern chair, modern table. Similarly, there is traditional sofa, traditional chair, and traditional table, correct? Now furniture factory is doing what? It is either, so which all are implementing furniture factory? There is modern furniture factory and there is traditional furniture factory. This furniture factory will be doing what? Based on whatever the string type it will receive, it will either create the modern furniture factory or traditional furniture factory. So this is the abstract factory. The furniture factory is the abstract factory. That is why it is an interface. And these two factories, modern furniture factory and traditional furniture factory, they are the ones that are creating the objects. The modern sofa, modern chair, modern table, traditional sofa, traditional chair, traditional table. Make sense?
So can you explain the code flow so that we can understand?
Sure.
So
let's understand from the code. So first thing that I did was that I took the input type, that what type of furniture I want. I want modern or I want traditional. I said I want modern. Okay. Now because I want modern, I told my furniture factory that you take the input and you create the factory accordingly. So I don't know that what it is doing inside, but it is creating a furniture factory and it is giving to me. Actually, it will be a modern factory because I've given the type as modern factory, right? So this part furniture factory is doing. So this is the abstract factory that is creating the factory for me. So what is the abstract factory doing? It is creating the furniture factory, right? Based on this input type, modern, right? Now this could have been a traditional factory also. Like over here, if you see, if I take the input as traditional, I will get a traditional factory, correct? Now from here, from this modern factory, I can create a sofa, chair, or a table. Now, whatever sofa it is, I don't even know whether it is modern sofa or modern chair because I am dealing with only sofa, chair, table. These are all interfaces. Modern, I am dealing with this factory, this furniture factory. I don't know whether it is modern sofa, modern chair, modern table. But when you run this code, you will see that it will give us modern sofa, modern chair, modern table.
Again, in this, instead of mentioning the name of my object, this reference type as traditional or modern, it could have better if we could have used only factory. Then it would have made more sense because
then people would have got confused. So okay, let me do it right now only for you. Okay, so this is factory, this is furniture factory. Okay, so this is some sofa. Okay, so you are sitting on some sofa. Let's do this. Should I run this? This should work, right? So now you can see I don't know what I'm dealing with, right? So I don't know what input I'm going to give. Let's see, right? Let's run this and see. Okay, so I abstract factory. Give me 1 second. Where am I right now?
Main class. Yeah.
Okay. Sitting on modern sofa. Now see, if I change this to traditional, runtime, I didn't make any change. I just changed over here, right? Very nicely. Sitting on traditional sofa. Does it make sense, guys?
So Kirti, both the factory and factory of factory is the abstract classes, right? Interfaces. Both of them are interfaces.
Yes.
If we don't specify any kind of input to that factory, what does the factory will return? Is there a default implementation? If it is so, then how can we do that?
There would be some default behavior, right? So in this, when we do create furniture factory, in this itself we can do in furniture factory when we have this create version. So right now I'm returning null. You can have some default value returning. Like by default, make it traditional. Otherwise it is modern, correct? Another example, like how we gave for logger, right? So there is debug info and error, correct? Now, if I say I also want on console or on file, right? So on console, it can be of error type, debug type, or info type. Similarly, on file, it can be of the type debug type, error type, info type. Then I would have to use factory of factories. Correct? Make sense, guys? Factory of factories. Does this example make sense? So I just changed the input and I showed you modern sofa, traditional sofa.
Sorry, Kirti, can you repeat the logger example?
Yeah, I will just draw the UML and show it.
Before that, why don't we have a factory that decides with, under create furniture factory, why don't we have modern factory and
traditional factory separately instead of doing if and else in the create furniture factory itself, like what done in the factory method pattern?
We could. So there's a level till watch where we want to stop, right? We could, like, if this is like another factory, like you could have another factory over here, I factory, and have those, right? I understand what you said, but yeah, that shows that you've understood properly. But yes, okay, cool. Let's see that example. So there was logger, right? So there are three types of logger. There is one debug logger, there is one error logger, and there is one info logger, correct? Now I am saying that I want all of them of the type like console logger. So I will have a console logger factory and I will have a file logger factory, right? And there will be a logger factory over here, right? So now from debug logger, they can be console debug logger or file debug logger. From error logger, they can be console error logger or they can be file error logger. From here, they can be console info logger and file info logger, correct? So console one will create the console loggers and the file one will create the file loggers. Make sense? Yep. Cool. See, I know it must have been overwhelming today, but this is what is real interesting low-level system design. Don't you think we are making things really extendable? We are following solid principles, right? So whenever now it is going to come, like whenever you have to create similar type of objects, you have to think of factory. Whenever you have to create factories of similar objects, like here, similar objects are what? Like similar objects are sofa, chair, table. They are all furniture, but you have to create factories of them because they can be of modern type or traditional type. Then you will use abstract, right? Similarly, over here, the similar type objects were what? Appetizer, main course, dessert. But now you want to create factories of those because Indian factory and Italian factory. So see it as like factory of factories. That will become abstract factory. Any questions for now, or has it become so bad that you guys won't ask anything now? Any questions?
So is it like that the lowest level of the segregation that we have in the classes, we will in the abstract factory will try to create the factory for the lowest abstraction, as in, for example,
I did not
here,
understand the question. Yeah.
for example, here in case main course have the Indian main course and the Italian main course, or whatever the lowest level of segregation, because we can also had a main course factory and then we can try to create an Italian.
Obviously, we would want like the concrete objects to get created, right? So see, this is actually, these are actually called your interfaces, and these are basically your concrete objects, right? So you have to, in the end, create the concrete objects like Indian appetizer, Italian appetizer. So your factory of factories, but final factory, the lowermost factory obviously has to create the final concrete objects that are needed, correct?
Yes,
Any doubts?
Kirti, what will be the business context to it? Like you understood that you make this, but how do you make it fit into your business real life scenario? Like you told me that I want all this, but not able to relate to business context. Like your Swiggy example, you had appetizers and all. Is it to show to customer if he selects on Chinese in a given restaurant, then I show him only those what is to be offered by a
A
particular
lot of
restaurant?
it is, I did not see, I took the parking and this is because the feedback came that I should take simpler examples, correct? But if you think of the logger example, it is something that we have implemented, right? Like I have implemented a logger. So if we are implementing logging and you want console also, file also, this is something that will come. And I don't like, this is a very common business problem that you would have to create similar objects, but factories of those objects. Like here it is car, bike, But isn't it a very common scenario that you might want like branding also, like two level of these type of objects, but then also this type, like within car only it can be Hyundai or Toyota. I can give so many examples because see, this GUI factory, it is actually a business case, right? Because if you are implementing GUI logic, if you are implementing say on WPF or somewhere, and you are actually creating buttons and text box, you have to write OS like code that is for OS, right? So in the starting, you will actually have done this. In the starting, you will take like what OS type it is, right? Based on the OS type, you will create that this is the factory. And on the basis of that, you will keep creating buttons, Windows button or whatever button.
Okay. Okay. And what changes in this, like with this factory to factory, what remains constant and what changes? Like if I implement this, what benefit do I get and what changes later? Like if I have to add new things to it, what will change? So like, am I saying that, let's say for this example of GUI of Mac and Windows, I think you have written. So let's say I am taking some Safari or something, let's say, okay, and if I add
Another
that,
OS, yeah.
so OS I add. Now with this, I need to implement button and text box as well, right?
Yes.
I
So
need to.
this OS factory will be responsible for implementing its own button for its own text box and like whatever is needed. So this OS factory will have to do. But suppose if we have a new widget itself, say with button text box, suppose I have a drop down, right? Then all the factories will have to implement this drop down. That Mac also will have to have a kind of drop down. Windows will also have to have a drop down, right?
So now then I have to change in my factory also that part, that like Mac factory
If
and
you
where
add a
and
new, if you
new.
add a new factory, then this will change. That is what I don't know who was it who said a very good thing, that how from factory to factory method, simple factory to factory method, what we did, we made this change now that if else should not be over here, right?
Correct.
Similarly, we
Correct.
could change that if else should not be over here, and we could make this also further extendable. But then obviously we have to like stop somewhere. So we could add
Okay.
if else over here, and we would have to make a change over here.
So this is adding to your extendability. Like if I'm saying, if I want to introduce a new OS, then to the GUI factory, I will add a new factory and I have to I can implement those buttons for that new OS and then call it via GUI factory only itself. And when I'm calling in my client, I'll be calling it through button and text box only. And the real object which I'm going to get would be of the OS, the new OS which I've introduced. Correct?
Correct. Yep. See,
Kirti, one thing.
just one point I wanted to say. Okay, for those who are saying move ahead, I have finished like for the class. There is no new thing as such that I will be covering. Before you guys leave, okay, I know a lot of people will leave, so I'll just quickly say a few things. Firstly, I will properly write down the homework and I will mention it on Discord and over mail. I will reassign all the people who have not been assigned, who want to be reassigned to a group. I will do all of that within 1 to 2 hours, like after the class ends. And over the weekend, yes, today only I will assign you to the groups and I will give you the homework. So over the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you have 3 days. Please invest some time and please try to do the homework, discuss with your group members. If the group members are not responding, if no one is responding, tell me, I will add you to another group. And instead of finding on Discord, is there anyone from group number this, is there anyone from group number this, just mail them or connect over LinkedIn. Okay. If they are not responding, if they are not active, tell me, I will reassign you to another group. Okay. If you want to change the group, please on one channel, communications channel, don't put on any other channel. On the communications channel, tell me you want to be assigned to what group. I want you to be responsible as group mates to review each other codes to learn together. Okay, please. Okay, one more thing before, please don't leave, like 5 minutes more. One more thing I just wanted to say, that even though design patterns look very overwhelming at this point, just think of it. If the question was given to you that create buttons and text box for different OS type, what you would have done before today's class, just think about it, what solution you would have wrote. Would you have written so many if else? If it is a button, And if it is a text box, and within that, would it have been a if Mac, if Windows, or a upper level if, another level if, and then inside that this, would that have been a good code? Think about it, right? So just think about, are you able to think in the process of writing code that follows solid principles, that is extendable, maintainable, reusable, especially when you are writing, when you are implementing inheritance composition, you are really doing reusability, right? So even though it seems overwhelming, but many times in daily work also and in interviews also it has happened, creating similar objects, very simple. I will implement factory design pattern. Even if abstract factory and factory method is overwhelming right now, it is fine. Just take out one day and work on factory. Once you have understood factory properly, you have written the code, you are sure that you have understood factory, then you start writing the code for factory method and for abstract factory. Okay. But till now we have covered only like related only 2 to 3 design patterns, right? It is going to get harder only from here. So consider it as a good news or a bad news, I don't care. It is going to get much harder from here. So like instead of getting overwhelmed, invest some time and let's study together. Let me help you also. Okay. Please stop this being kids and fighting over C++ versus Java versus Python. Today I walked you through C++ code also and Java code also. I'm sure you were able to understand. It is just syntax difference. Everything is there on GitHub. ChatGPT is there. Just ask what will be the syntax of this in Java for this code. If you write in C++, if you write in Java, just ask for C++, or if you write in C++, just ask for Java. It is not a big difference. Okay. As a good software developer, you should be able to write code. If you do not want to structure in different Java classes and in different Java files or different CPP, HPP files, just write in one file. How I've written for abstract factory, right? I've written in one file itself. It is not that I'm not saying that create many CPP files, HPP files. In real world, we write in different HPP, CPP files. What? Because HPP are header files and CPP there is source code. I can see people asking, that is why I'm telling. So CPP is the source code. You will be like writing the definitions of all the functions and all that over there, right? And versus in HPP, you will be declaring that, okay, this is the function, this is basically the signature and all of that. And you will include the header file in the source file. Don't worry about all of this. Concentrate on being able to write code. Don't worry about the language. Don't get overwhelmed about the language. Try to implement as much code as possible. You have invested money into this, right? 1 week is over, 4 more weeks to go. If you work for 4 more weeks, you will be very proud of it. You have given some amount of money. You have like the group active right now, right? The truth is, once the course ends, very less number of people will be active. We see in HLD very less number of people are active now, right? So once the course ends, you won't get as much help as you're getting right now because everyone is there to help each other, right? So please be active. And if you want motivation in terms of social media, if you want to share on Insta, LinkedIn, I will repost it. I would love it. It helps me also spread the word. Okay. So please use any way possible to keep yourself motivated. I am here to help you out. Like my team is also there. We will help you with any doubts that you have. If any of your doubts are left and unanswered from any of the 3 classes, please put it on Discord today. Okay. Good. Like enough prep talk, I am guessing. Can I, like, it might be a bit overwhelming, but can I please expect you to show up 4 weeks? I don't want number of people attending to go less. Okay. Thank you. Yes, I will upload the recording ASAP. Watch it again if you have to go through all the diagrams. All the code is there. If you have any questions in the code, ask me. I will be here to help you. Now, if you have any questions, whoever wants to go can go. If you have any questions, please stay. If you want to take pictures, take pictures. Very good. Okay. Continue. Yeah. Any questions you have?
Yeah. So normally, if we think of a way, like assuming we don't know these factory patterns, what we could have done is we could have generally gone and created if-else cases, and as per the input, we could have created a new object out of it, right? So now what we are doing is just that in place of creating the objects then and there, we are calling the these factories, right? So if else persist over there, right? Just that we are dedicating that functionality to some other file, or let's say some You got my
See,
point,
right now the thing is that when I'm creating the objects, you see only one output statement. But the point is creating a Mac button object. It's going to be a huge code, right? If you move all of that if else into one, your code is going to be extremely huge. And also think of maintainability, reusability, things like there might be another team working on Mac, there might be another team working on Windows, there might be another team working on buttons, there might be teams working on text box. It seems like an output statement right now, but when you think of business logic, just creation of one type. When I talk about creation of a luxury car, like assembling all of this, or creation of a logger, like for debug or this, the logic is going to be huge. It is not going to be just one output statement, correct? In real business. That is why right now it just feels like you're just moving one if, like if from one place to another. But in real business case, what will happen is that you are reducing the cost, you're keeping it a lot more maintainable, reusable, extendable, all of this.
No, Kirti, but the code to create object will be one line only, no new of that.
Yeah, the object creation is that one line only, right?
Here, I think one thing probably needs to be clarified first, because many people are thinking that you are going to write everything, or maybe you are going to maintain the whole code or something like that.
Subhajit,
But
1 second. Your voice is very low. Can you come a bit nearer to the mic?
yeah, sure. Okay. So what I was saying is, many people have this misconception, let's say, that you are thinking you are going to write the whole code, or you are going to maintain the code, or probably you are writing everything in a file or separate file. Like you are thinking from your perspective. But think about it from a bigger company. Let's say that for a single project or for a single particular section, 10 developers are assigned, right? For example, if I take it as a example of the car creation, let's say, right? So only 1 or 2% is working for the luxury car creation. One is working for the sedan. One is working for the bike. You don't know anything about bike creation, or you don't know anything about sedan creation. You are only assigned to a particular thing, right? Now, how the code that you are writing is going to interact with someone else if someone else doesn't know anything about your code? So there has to be something like standard patterns, standard outputs, something like that, right? Where you can reuse your code as well, and at the same time you are following all the solid principles, like you are not repeating different cases, you are not writing the same code again and again. You are also making sure that it can be extended later on. If you take into account all of these cases, then you will figure out that yeah, this pattern makes sense. But if you are thinking, okay, I can write if else in one file as well, I can write in separate file as well, that will not make that much sense. But if you think from a perspective that, let's say, okay, there is a senior code developer or something like this, I'm just taking an example, that there is a senior developer who is going to write the if else condition or whatever it is. But what is actually going to be there inside that if else condition is being like written by someone else. So everybody has their jobs, like particular sector given, right? So that's where this factory design pattern, this everything makes sense. It comes to play. Okay, so I need to worry only about, for example, this factory pattern that is given here. You only need to worry about creating the Indian factory. You only need to worry about the Italian factory. So you don't need to think.
Subhajit, you got muted.
Oh, yeah. So that's what my point is. Like, if you are confused about it a bit, it might help if you think from a perspective that each of these boxes might be each of different employees working on that different parts. Then how are you going to put them together if none of them know about what the other one is doing? Then I think it makes a bit of sense to follow this kind of pattern. Then you know what the input is coming and what the output will be. Right. Yeah, that's what I think.
See, that is why I did a mock interview with this guy on the channel. If you see, we did the first one with him because he's awesome. But okay, great job. Thank you. And if you remember the first example that I took from where I started, so you will be implementing the creation of the bank account and I will be using it. So someone else is creating it, I am using it. Again, just remember that what is the point of factory, or the variations of factory, that firstly we are abstracting out the creation process. So the user should not come to know how we are creating. Right? I just want to use a particular object. I don't want to know how it is being created. Second, you are encapsulating the creation process in one. So whatever is the creation process, how much ever complex or simple or whatever is happening, I don't need to know it is happening somewhere else. Does it make sense? Any other questions?
Yeah, Kirti, like the same question which I asked earlier. So yeah, it is not related to the factory, but still, while implementing, like in my current company, so I was just thinking like, what should be the ideal way to implement this? Because previously I was thinking like, if the exception is common, like for all of the 3 classes, then it should be handled in the first layer rather than handling individually.
Okay, again, my question to you, Roli, is what kind of exception are you talking about? Are you talking about the exception that happened during the creation, or are you talking about the exceptions that happen while using the objects?
So for example, like, so basically it is not while creating the object of the classes. It is basically, for example, if you're trying to update the order or order status basically. So in one order, in one class, you are just updating the fulfillment, like handling the fulfillment. And in another class, you're handling the cancellation. Okay. In both the classes, it can be possible that order updation is not possible. So this is kind of a common exception for both the classes. So
see, I will explain this point to you when we pick up more design patterns. Right now, the focus of the factory was to focus on creation. Exception handling, if it is common in different classes, how can we take it up? Structure, behavior, we will look at it. Okay. But for now, this part, like for this week, focus on the creation of the objects. I have taken your question into account and I will answer it in one of the design patterns. Can you have some patience?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. For now, if you're not talking about creation, then don't worry about it right now. Worry about creation of objects when we are talking about factory or the variations of
Hi, Kirti.
If we take this some example ahead. Oh,
If we take this example, you got muted.
oh, I thought someone else is also talking. So
Oh,
if
no, go
this same thing, the exception, even though if this exception is occurring at the creation level, it should be handled by the client only, because means how we want to design our application based upon that application means exception that depends on the client, not the library.
Okay, I have noted this into account. I will probably take another, I will put another discussion itself for exception handling at all levels. Okay, for now, because most of the people have left, let's keep this discussion. Let me structure the class in one of the classes where I take up exception handling and we pick up like at all levels if exception happens, how should we handle it? Cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Kirti. Can you explain about the bean factory used in Spring Boot? Like
Sorry,
it is
what?
in about the bean factory used in Spring Boot. Like basically it is used based on this method itself, I think. Bean factory.
Bin factory.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not aware of it. Like what are you talking about?
I'm talking about the Spring Boot, basically auto wiring and all.
Oh, okay. I am okay. Can I take it up on Discord later?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
do not think I have enough or right knowledge right now to pick it up or how that works. Give me some time. I'll check it out on Discord. I'll check it out and let you know. I will know.
Basically, okay. Sure, got it.
Yeah, give me some time. Let me check this out.
Kirti, one question. I have one question. So here in the examples you gave, we are only like using a new and creating an object, right, inside the factory. But typically in the real life scenarios, it will not be that much alone. Is that right? So the factory, when it is creating an object, say we'll take a sofa, then in that case it will do more than that. That's why we are abstracting that to a factory. Is that right?
Yes, because we won't be just creating, like probably there will be more things we'll be doing while creating, like while we are creating the order, maybe we will block the table or assign someone for delivery or things like that. we will probably carry out another process or do something. Basically, whatever has to be happening while creating the objects, we'll do that. See, firstly, this is not the only creational design pattern. There are more creational design patterns, and this is not like this pattern is going to fit everywhere. We will look at more like if there are a lot of configurations, how can we create it? Like right now, we are just talking that if there's a simple configuration, but they're related objects. So we will look at more examples, and then we will be able to compare and understand that this pattern fits for this case and this pattern fits for this case, correct? So by the so next 2 weeks, we'll be doing design patterns only, that's it. And for the last 2 weeks, we'll be picking up examples, end-to-end example, and then we will compare the design patterns that, okay, this one fits better or this one fits better. I guess the applications will get much more clearer then.
Sure. Why I'm asking this is like initially we were doing like iLogger is equal to new debug logger. That we were doing the client code. Later we added a factory and we had factory method, and we were doing like factory is equal to new like logger factory, right? So it's anyhow like we are instantiating, but we have just instantiated a different thing. So I like when thinking why we do this, maybe creating a logger is not simple. It involves more things, like it's not new logger alone. That was the reason I could think of. That's why I'm asking if that is
it.
valid
The
or
main reason why factory method over simple factory is open close principle. So if you think about it, this is the problem that we were trying to solve, right? That if we add another factory, like if we add another type of logger, I shouldn't have to make change in my factory. Like the if else was still in the factory, right? Over here. So that was the major reason, like from simple factory to factory method. That is one of the major reasons. Why? Because we don't want to make the change in the factory when we add a new one. That is also there, that it's going to be complex. But one of the reasons is that because you don't want to change the factory every time you add a new type of logger, right? So you don't want to do that. That's
But then in the abstract factory, we are adding the if condition, no? So doesn't
Where?
that in the abstract factory, we are adding the if condition, no?
In this vehicle factory, correct?
Yeah, in the abstract factory interface we add.
So that is what some people pointed out, that how we improved it from factory to factory method. Even this can be further improved, like that we make this that I factory and then have different factories and implement like create factory over there. So that if we add new type, say from Hyundai, Toyota, if we add Maruti, we won't have to make any change in this factory. That is what someone pointed out. We can further improve this in that way. That is correct. But then this is the standard abstract factory design pattern. Usually factory of factories, this is enough. The point is that even if we move it from factory, we would have to make, as somebody pointed out, we would have to make change somewhere else, not while creating the concrete object like over here, but somewhere else outside, right? So it has to be changed, but how much do you want to improve the process? Where do you want to do the if else? It depends on a lot of things, including the requirements. And it is true that this can be also further improved.
Okay, so what I understand is somewhere we have to do the manual change, right?
Yeah, obviously, because you are adding a new type, so you'll have to add the viewer.
But here we are eliminating the addition in the if condition.
Like in factory method, we eliminated the change in adding in the factory. Here we will have to add in the abstract factory. If you want to eliminate that, you would have to make the change like we did in a factory method.
Okay.
So basically we are pushing these if else conditions at the lower modules, right? So that we can hide the code from the like higher modules. Basically we can hide the how the operation is happening at the high level modules and exposing it at the low level modules.
What is high level, low level over here?
For example, there is a main factory, right? For example, this vehicle factory. Now inside that we are having two factories, which is Hyundai and Toyota. So inside Hyundai factory, somewhere will be having the if conditions, right? Like what it is going to create a car or a bike, something like that, right? So basically, rather than having the if conditions at the vehicle factory,
No, look at the main of the main code of both C++ and Java. Just open GitHub and check it out. So how it is happening is that there we like the function that is there is create car or create bike, right? And if it is Hyundai factory, it is going to create car or bike. So there are like say different functions inside this create car, create bike. There is no if condition for that. There is a function for that. Now we are calling it say whatever factory we have, we are saying factory dot create car like this. There is no if condition for creating car or bike. Just check out the code once. I guess
Okay.
you got confused. That's okay. Just check out the code, the main code where we are using it. Okay, check it out.
Okay. And one more, this is I think in the simple factory and in the factory method, right? The only difference is that we are inheriting the factory also, right? Basically, we are creating the factory as an interface so that it can be implemented by child factories. That is the only
Correct.
difference.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So it is a factory of factories. Abstract factory is a factory of, say, it is abstract means interface, right? So it is abstract factory, and then these are concrete factories. Similarly, you can say these are like abstract objects, these are concrete objects. Way to view it.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Guys, thank you so much. I will let you guys go now. Yeah, 10.
Ma'am, actually, I have one slight request now. Actually, today you have like आपने आज तीन
Voice
टॉपिक
is
पढ़ाया है सिंगल
breaking it.
तो मैम मतलब ये जो या तो अपन मतलब एक सजेशन है मेरा अगर इफ यू एक्सेप्ट इट कि अगर एक टॉपिक के बाद हम डाउट स्टार्ट करें फिर एक टॉपिक के बाद मैम मतलब फ्लो टूट जाता है पूरा का पूरा जैसे टॉपिक होता है फिर बीच में सब स्टार्ट हो जाता है तो मैम सबको दिमाग से निकल जाता है कि क्या पढ़ा क्या नहीं पढ़ा और एक तो बिगिनर्स है मतलब हम स्टार्टिंग से बिल्कुल बिगिनर है तो कुछ दिमाग से सारा निकल जाता है स्टार्टिंग 3 क्लासों से मतलब सेम इसलिए मैम थोड़ा इफ पॉसिबल मैम
क्या डाउट्स बाद में ले बीच में नहीं ले दैट्स व्हाट यू
हाँ मतलब एक टॉपिक के बाद ले लें या फिर क्योंकि टॉपिक के जैसे बीच में स्टार्ट होता है ना तो थोड़ा बहुत समझ में आता रहता है लेकिन फिर बीच में जैसे फिर दूसरों की बातों ध्यान चल जाता है आज भी कुछ नए नए टर्म्स ऐसे सब सुने कि सारा पूरा पीछे का निकल गया एकदम से फिर अभी मैं अब वापस मैंने ज्वाइन करी भी पिछले में 1.5 घंटे बाद क्लास मैंने छोड़ दी मतलब थोड़ा समझ में बिल्कुल नहीं आ रहा तो ऐसा लग रहा था सिर्फ कुछ बहुत नया ही पढ़ रहा हूँ जैसे इसलिए
ओके एक तो पहले तो क्लास बीच में मत छोड़ना मतलब डोंट लीव इट इन बिटवीन ट्राई टू अटेंड इट
सॉरी फॉर दैट मैम बट लिटरली आज बहुत ऐसा लग गया था जैसे क्या नया ही पढ़ रहा हूँ इसलिए फिर ऐसा लगा कि चलो अभी बाद में मैम से लास्ट में क्लास की लास्ट में बात करेंगे
नहीं ठीक है वॉच द रिकॉर्डिंग एंड बताना कोई भी डाउट हो तो आई विल हेल्प यू आउट अलग से भी डिस्कॉर्ड पे भी पूछो मैं बताऊंगी एंड पॉइंट टेकन मतलब आई विल ट्राई टू स्ट्रीमलाइन द क्वेश्चंस इसलिए मोस्ट ऑफ द क्रिएटर्स दैट यू सी व्हेन दे टेक लाइव क्लासेस नो they don't enable mics for the students like they will enable only at the end so probably I will do something like aisa and we can talk in chat and probably in the end we can I take the feedback but please watch the recording as soon as possible and अगर doubt है तो आप बार बार देखो पूछो जितनी बार पूछोगे if you ask me to explain 10 times I'll explain you 10 times okay if you're a beginner
Yeah, this is one of the best courses. Like I am telling you, कि creators start नहीं करते हैं माइक वाइक का, वो सिर्फ चैट से करते हैं. ये एक अच्छा तरीका है कि डाउट अपन पूछ सकते हैं. लेकिन मैम टॉपिक की अगर बात करें ना तो ऐसा लगता है कि हम भी पूछ सकते हैं डाउट्स. फिर हमारे मैम डाउट्स ही नहीं आते हैं. क्योंकि टॉपिक समझा हुआ नहीं होता है तो फिर मैं डाउट्स ही नहीं आ पाते हैं फिर वो क्योंकि बीच में कट हो जाता है पूरा फ्लो एकदम से इसीलिए.
हाँ, I understand. So for those who don't understand Hindi, he is saying that his flow gets broken. He is a complete beginner. So the problem is that once the flow is broken, he is unable to understand. And that's okay, Raj. That's completely fine. I will take the feedback, but please try to watch the recordings. Everyone who are having any sorts of doubts, if you need any extra help over Discord over the weekend, please don't leave the classes. Okay, unless you show up, I will not be able to help you. So please don't miss any classes. Please attend it. I will try everything like in my hands to help you out. Okay. I will take up all the questions. I know questions get missed. Please mention on Discord. There are some suddenly if you ask me a question about Spring or about things like this, I will not be 100% sure that should I be answering it live. Like what if I say something wrong, right? So let me also structure it properly and help you out. So please put all your questions on Discord and let me take it up like one by one.
See, one last doubt, if you may take that. Can we say like the bidirectional relation is only between subscriber class like user and notification class like reminder? Like, because I couldn't like think of any other example in the bidirectional scenario. This is from the last class.
You have been asking this since yesterday. So what are the two classes that you're talking about?
One was the user, like one is the user class, like the subscriber to the notification, and the other is a notification class, like a reminder class, if I may say. Yeah.
Okay. See, usually in real systems, the one who is taking the reminder, the one who is sending it, usually might be different classes. But for now, okay, there's like pattern and all that. We will look into all of this. For now, you're saying this can call this and this can also call this. So this becomes bidirectional, correct? This is a good enough example. But I understood that you want more examples for bidirectional association, right? Where both the classes can call each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
But Kirti, in this one, when you say that one can call the other, does it mean that it becomes an argument to one of the behaviors within each of these methods, or these both contains like user contains a reminder and reminder contains the user? I mean,
No,
when
not
you say
contains. If it was contains, it would have been a has a relationship. Then it would have been either aggregation or composition. If we are talking about can call, either like in one of the functions, like I can call the functions inside the reminder, or I can have reminder ka object sent as like an sent in the arguments in a particular function. Basically, I can access reminder. I'm not saying I have a reminder object or I am inheriting from reminder object. I can access it. I can call the functions, or I can probably send reminder as an object in the argument. There are multiple ways, but I have access to reminder. That's what.
okay, because the reason why I'm asking is because in your UMLs, if you start showing all the associations of unidirectional and bidirectional, it'll be the arrows all along the places, honestly. And secondly, I don't know if we consciously control that this behaviors can access that object or not. I mean, we try to, but over the period, we do a jack fix that we might not consciously control that.
See, honestly, as a good design, you should be controlling it, because that is the basis of OOPS, right? That you should be abstracting out, like whatever info only can be accessed, only that should be able to be accessed.
No, true,
And then,
true.
yeah.
But the client side who's using both of these objects many a times might not control it, because when you're saying the behavior of the reminder is going to use the user type, which means the client is going to have the instance of both user and reminder. They are the one who's orchestrating between this, right? There, I'm not sure how much we can give a leverage to control, saying that, yeah, we very consciously control that this entity can have an access to the other one, kind of a thing. I mean, from a pure OOPS perspective, yes, I'm not denying it. But when you look at the reality to really, when we talk about the behaviors, I guess it becomes really, really tough to really be very pure on this one.
So we have to try to be as, as correct as possible. Okay, I have one question now. So you said if I start putting as many associations as possible, like on the UML, then I'll have too many arrows. This guy has been asking me example of bidirectional association. Can you think of any examples? Unidirectional, bidirectional, any bidirectional examples where both the classes can access each other?
I think
Everyone. So everyone who is present over here, can you think of any bidirectional association examples where both classes can access each other?
Teacher and subject could be bidirectional, right? Teacher will have.
But please try to give better examples, no? Like not teacher student shape, not.
Right.
Sorry?
Driver and ride. Right.
Driver and ride. This is the example that we took yesterday also, that ride will have information of driver and driver will have that what all rides we did. This is a very good example. What else? Any more examples that we can think of?
Order and food.
Order and?
Food item.
Now, why food items will have, okay, if you're maintaining that this food item was involved in these many orders, then maybe, but usually that is not how we maintain it, right? Usually it is like order has food items. Why should food items have access to order?
Author and books.
So author has written these many books. This book has been written by this author. Yes. What else? Any other examples?
Might not be the right one, but you can use person having an access to the CIBIL score and CIBIL score knowing who the person is, kind of.
Okay. So score is of which person and person has how much score. Okay.
Can we say person and his degree?
Person and his degree. So person, I would rather have like person has a degree, right? Like instead of association. I feel
Yeah.
that would be better, like composition relationship would be better.
Has a relation.
Okay, I guess enough food for thought for the weekend, right?
Kirti, one thing I wanted to just ask. When you start with this behavioral and structural, so will you be taking up the difference between the two? Because I've been trying to understand for long. The
I
difference.
remember your question. I remember.
I'm just I've been trying to learn it for last 3 years, though it is not
With
my
every design
forte.
pattern, you will exactly understand why is this design pattern behavior or structure. Okay, does that work?
Okay, yeah, thank you.
One last question though. It's like
Mhm.
in all these patterns, right? We have been saying that okay, it's more of creation of these objects and
Okay, you got muted. I don't know if someone's doing it
yeah,
purpose.
yeah,
Yeah.
I see that somebody mutes it up actually. But anyway, so with all these patterns, even though the objective is to create the objects and the other objective is to ensure that the client is not changing much at that level while creating the objects. But on the downside, are we not really creating a class explosion and all of this because you don't know how much of these objects should be created in long run when you really start these entities? Maybe you would be creating only once or twice, but for that so much of layering, it's debatable, I would say. But uh, do you really think, is there a yardstick on which you decide that when you go with uh, following everything against where you do it with the KPI of saying that I'm just creating the object once in the entire lifetime of the process? Do we really need
See,
to?
the thing is, uh, see, we have to learn where to not force fit the design patterns, correct? Like just because we know the design pattern doesn't mean we have to apply it. But at the
Yeah.
same time, we should be well aware that these are the possible solutions for this problem. Now, after we cover these design patterns and we start looking at end-to-end systems, we will talk about how to take the requirements and how to convert the requirements and how to, start with the design patterns and how to implement all of that. But the point is that like we will have to learn that will this be like what will be the further requirements, how much do we want to make it extendable? Like over here in the abstract factory, some people are saying even this should be further extendable. Why are we having if else in the furniture factory or in the abstract factory, correct?
No,
So
true,
that's
true,
why
true. But in real
we
world,
have
the
to normalize.
requirements are, yeah, but in the real world, requirements are not that spread, right? I mean, initially you might get for so far, I would
Opposite, I
say.
would say. No,
Yeah,
no, I
yeah.
would say that real world requirements can be actually very complex, but we end up not following the design patterns. Actually, in my experience, I have used factory a lot of times. I have used abstract factory hardly once. I think only once I've used it. So if I use factory, I usually don't even go to factory method. Like I just implement simple factory and I go like, okay, done. Like in my interviews also and in my daily work also. Usually I've done only factory, but factory I would say is very common. Like you creational process, just put it into another class. That is something that is there in like almost all systems I've seen so far.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
So yes, but being like, like having the fact that we have to understand all the basics in this course, I will be covering things that are not really like, very, very required. Like yesterday we covered KISS, try, Yagni, all of that. It's not something that comes up in work, but something that you should know, right? So I have to obviously cover these things, and we have to learn eventually that what of these things are important in work and interviews, all of that.
Yeah. Kirti, one more thing.
Just wanted to
While
understand that this simple factory pattern that we learned, that is nothing but factory method, right?
Simple factory, we learned the difference between simple factory and factory method, right? Were you in the whole class?
In between, actually, due to network.
Watch the class again. We learned factory method properly.
Kirti, for that solid principle of dependency injection, I was going through some notes and all, so I somehow read Martin Fowler for it. Okay. And he talked about reflection in it. I don't know. So it went overboard for me.
Reflection.
He started talking. So like I was totally confused then. I know what is reflection to an extent, but then he used reflections that we do dependency inversion. He talks about dependency inversion. So I was trying to. So would you be able to give me some insight on that part if it is related to solid, like when we say dependency inversion we need to do. He talked about the reflection in it. How that is related? Like
I
because
think
what
you
we
only
discussed.
asked me this yesterday, right? That what does inversion mean? So I was actually reading about it a bit today, and the thing is, like so the thing is, see, usually what happens is that we have some low level functions and all, and then the thing is that high level usually depends on low level. That okay, this is how it is, so this is the wrapper or this is the class, and then we are using the function like this. Sometimes like you understand that usually high level is dependent on low level. But what dependency inversion, how is it happening is that now our abstract class is going to say that this is the contract, like this is the template that low level has to follow. So that is why this is sort of an inversion, that now low level has to follow the contract or the template or whatever your abstract class or your interface is forcing you to implement. Correct? So that is why the term inversion is used usually.
Okay. Actually, see, what I'm saying. See, where we are getting I'm getting confused is that those frameworks which come into picture with this, right? That Spring and all talk about this more, that we are doing dependency inversion, we are doing all that stuff, and how that is related to design pattern. So I understand design pattern, like what we are now discussing. I started reading about design pattern before joining your class for 3-4 days. So I'm not technical, I'm more functional person, but I wanted to understand the details. So I got into this class. Now, it's more like language. What you said, it is a syntax. You need to understand how the things are getting built, right? So we are trying to do it's like a vocabulary structure, and then how they are implemented, right? Rather than going into all that synthetics and all that stuff. So I'm not bothered about that. I want to understand. So where I'm getting confused is how this frameworks will come to a picture into this LLDs. Where will framework? A lot of people are asking. So let's say not maybe Spring and all, maybe J2E. How they interplay into it? Well, not completely. Maybe 1 or 2 examples that in J2E this particular framework, this particular library, how they are using it. Like in JDBC.
I'll be honest. That is honestly part out of the scope of the course. Like honestly, but I can see the confusion happening over here, and let me see if possible, if I can probably help you out, like how to do this. Yeah.
Or you can give me some reference to study that. Okay, you read it here. I will read through. Not a problem. Maybe if you want to discuss here, you can just give me reference. I will read through. So that we separate out how I'm designing the system and how I use the frameworks. So my idea to join this class is to understand the crux underlying crux. Yes.
See, in simple terms, right? In simple terms, right? Just to take home the point, right? In simple terms, you are designing and you are creating the objects. When you look at all of these patterns, what this frameworks will come in play is you just do a convention saying that, okay, you just give me this object and I need only one instance of that object. I'm just taking a random example, okay? You don't need to write it. You just need to configure it and that is available for you. So instead of you writing new class of and passing these arguments, you just decorate it with some annotations and it automatically be available in the entire application context. I mean, it's kind of eases you out. You don't need to write so much. That is an easy takeaway when you look at any kind of a framework.
Okay.
Let me see how else I can help you out with this. I will get back to you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. I like the excitement, guys, but I want this same energy till the 5th week. Okay. Like till the 5th week, you guys should be asking questions like this. It is not like the
Okay.
first week only you're staying back and asking questions. I want the consistency. Okay.
Yeah. Surely.
Okay. Okay. Now go sleep, take rest. Enough of me for 3 days. See you on Tuesday. And please keep chatting and please be active on Discord. Yes.
Is it on mobile app also, Discord? Can I join through? Because this is my
Yes,
official
yes.
laptop. Okay.
I am always active on phone.
Okay. Thanks. Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
See you everyone. Good night. Have a very
Bye.
good weekend. Study well
Thanks.
and enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.